The Second Empire of Azeroth. Chapter 1. Orcs of Redridge Mountains. Roger lay on the ridge, watching the orcs moving in the distance, his heart filled with worry. He never thought he would transmigrate into the game, and even transmigrate to the Stormwind Kingdom after the opening of the Dark Portal. Knowing the history, he understood that the Stormwind Kingdom would eventually be defeated, and Lakeshire behind him would also be occupied by the orcs. Although Lakeshire was just a map in the game for him, it was his hometown for the body he had transmigrated into. It's hard to leave one's homeland. Roger hadn't completely gotten rid of the original owner's influence and still felt deeply for Lakeshire. At this moment, knowing that Lakeshire would eventually fall, he found it hard to accept. But what could he do? "Roger, did you find anything?" A young voice came from beside him. Roger turned his head to look. It was his younger brother, John, who had just turned 18 and had enlisted in the army due to the urgent war situation. Fortunately, he could take care of this young lad, so he wouldn't die under the orc's axe. At his age, he really shouldn't be on the battlefield. Thinking of this, Roger couldn't help but shake his head at this goddamn era. "Roger, is your arm hurting again?" John asked with concern. "No." Roger casually denied it. He didn't want John to worry. Character card, Roger's Kishane, Roger. Information, human of Stormwind Kingdom, 20 years old. Status, mortal, minor injury, recovering quickly. Profession, warrior, level 2/hunter, level 4. Hero profession, none. Divinity, none. Title, none. Equipment, none. Talents, unyielding soul, will try every means to achieve the goal, endless knowledge, has a better understanding of everything than normal people. Skills, Stormwind Kingdom military swordsmanship, beginner. Archery, beginner. Setting traps, beginner. Underwater combat, beginner. Looking at the character panel, he was not luxurious, even a little shabby. Even the best talent didn't seem very eye-catching. But Roger knew that this was his greatest reliance. Without this system, his growth would undoubtedly be much slower, and he might not even be able to touch the threshold of transcendence even when he was old. "Roger, there are only 2 monsters there. Let's sneak over and maybe we can take them down," John suggested. Roger's forehead slightly broke out in a cold sweat, and he quickly interrupted John's dangerous idea. "No, they are fully armed, we are no match at all. 2 human recruits, without even armor, wanting to take down 2 orc wolf riders was simply lighting a lamp in the latrine courting death. But there are only 2 of them, and there are 2 of us. We are evenly matched," John said unconvinced. "Our mission is not to kill the enemy, but to scout." Roger interrupted his brother's dangerous idea, grabbed him, and retreated. John was helpless and could only follow his brother back. Coming down from the top of Redridge Mountain to a clearing on the mountainside, it had become a military camp, filled with war horses wearing armor. At the entrance of the camp hung the lion flag of the Stormwind King, and a banner of valor. That was the banner of valor King Lane awarded to Lothar. This cavalry was led by Lothar's Stormwind Knight Order, and they were waiting for an opportunity to defeat the orcs. After months of attacks, the orcs burned a large number of farms, towns, and villages, paralyzing Stormwind's economy and making it impossible to guarantee the army's logistics, forcing them to retreat in big steps. But Lothar did not succumb, but was looking for an opportunity to defeat the orcs. After several contacts with the orcs, Lothar predicted that easily obtaining the land at the foot of Redridge Mountain would make the orcs arrogant and negligent. They would not let go of Lakeshire, which was isolated, and would inevitably send troops here. So Lothar had long brought an elite knight order to station on the mountainside, relying on the supplies of Lakeshire to rest and reorganize the army, waiting for the opportunity. "Report." Roger pulled John and rushed into the camp, shouting to the guard officer, "We found the monster's scouts." Upon hearing this, the officer immediately asked, "Where?" "Triangle Crossroads." "You 2 come with me." The officer was overjoyed, left a sentence, and hurried towards the commander's tent. John happily followed behind. He could finally see the hero he admired, Lothar. "Roger, did we make a contribution this time?" "I guess so." Roger knew that he had made a contribution this time. The appearance of the orc wolf riders meant that they were going to attack Lakeshire, and the opportunity Lothar was waiting for had arrived. But he didn't reveal it. Who knew if these nobles would kill him because he was too smart? Yangshiu was a lesson from the past. "Great. John was still excited. So can we go to the battlefield to kill monsters? Roger helplessly grinned. His parents were both honest people, how could they have given birth to a battle maniac like John? What a freak! No, from now on, I must keep an eye on him and not let him die on the battlefield. John didn't know that he had been targeted by his brother and was completely immersed in the fantasy of going to the battlefield to kill enemies. But soon, John woke up from his fantasy because he saw his idol. Lo! Sir Lothar, can you sign my name? In an instant, John became a little fanboy, looking at Lothar with admiration. What an embarrassing guy! Roger slapped his forehead. How could he have such an embarrassing brother? He quickly pulled John away, saluted Lothar, reporting Sir Lothar, Lakeshire Guard Rogers Kishane reporting to you. Lothar returned a military salute and asked eagerly, you found the monsters wolf riders? Yes. Although there are only 2 wolf riders, they are scouting the road to attack Lakeshire. Very good. Lothar happily came to the sand table, looked at the troop deployment on it, and muttered, there is still some time, I want to see how to make it foolproof. The knights generals gathered around and were also thinking of ways. Roger glanced at the sand table, wanting to say something, but after thinking about it, he didn't say it. John admired Lothar for a while before returning to normal. He also curiously looked at the sand table. Hey? Isn't this Redridge Mountain? Disturbed, everyone instantly turned to look at John. John was startled, stuck out his tongue, and flashed behind Roger. Roger glared at him angrily, be honest, John. Lothar smiled and waved his hand, it doesn't matter. Then he looked at John and asked curiously, can you understand the sand table? Seeing that Lothar didn't blame him, John breathed a sigh of relief. But to Lothar's question, he shook his head and said, I can't understand it, but Roger can. I often see him drawing maps of Redridge Mountain. Roger. Chapter 2. Everyone looked at Roger with amusement. They wouldn't be surprised if a knight of noble birth knew how to draw maps. But Roger, a commoner, knowing how to draw maps? How could that be possible? In the world of Azeroth, humans had always lived in a feudal society. The upper nobility enjoyed the right to education, and even if commoners studied, it wouldn't lead to a good social standing unless they accidentally learned magic. Therefore, most commoners could only rely on talent and hard work to become farmers, craftsmen, or merchants. Not to mention commoners, even minor nobles who wanted to rise in society through education could only dream. Staven's tragedy was a living example, and that was in Stormwind after the war, Stormwind after being ravaged by the orcs. Born in New China, standing under the red flag, let you bumpkins from another world feel the iron fist of socialism. Of course. Roger walked to the compass, pointing to the open space on the hillside marked with a blue flag. This is our current location. He then pointed to the location marked with a red flag. This is Goldshire. He swept his finger across the table. This is the road from Goldshire to Lakeshire, this is the triangular intersection, this is the mountain road. Lothar raised an eyebrow. This commoner really could understand the sand table. However, the sand table was marked very clearly, and a smart person could easily understand it. There were many smart commoners, and it wasn't worth his attention. That young man said you often draw maps. Are you studying the monster's attack routes? Roger hesitated for a moment, but realizing he couldn't hide it anymore, he could only nod. That's right. Lothar pointed to the bridge in Lakeshire. If the monsters want to attack Lakeshire, they will inevitably take this road. I will have Mayor Solomon lead people to block one end of the bridge, and then lead the cavalry to charge down and annihilate the monsters. Roger nodded. This plan is reasonable. The nobles sneered. Did he really need to say that? Lothar was the best commander in Stormwind. Could there be anything wrong with his tactics? Roger glanced at them, then said indifferently, however, what if those monsters desperately break through? Will the knights use their lives to resist? Of course. A noble said loudly, as knights, we should step forward. As long as the kingdom needs it, we can dedicate our lives. Hearing the noble's words, the others immediately stood at attention solemnly, a sense of mission filling the camp. That's great, brother. I want to go to the battlefield and kill enemies too. John said excitedly. Roger turned around and slapped him on the head. You're my only brother. I won't let you go to your death with a bunch of idiots. The nobles were furious. Roger was practically pointing at their noses and cursing them. They immediately drew their swords, ready to kill this commoner who had offended his superiors. Lothar raised his hand, stopping the nobles. He looked at Roger with interest. You better give a reason, otherwise I can't protect a commoner who has insulted the nobility. Roger sneered, walked to the sand table, and pulled out the red flag representing the orcs, inserting it between the bridge and the mountain path. If those monsters attack Lakeshire, they must pass through here. At this time, the knights will charge down from the high ground, and they will surely win. If the monsters are facing certain defeat, they will definitely flee in all directions. The only directions they can escape are east, south, west, and north. However, the west is the direction of the knights' attack, the road back to the south is cut off by the knights, and the north behind the bridge is defended by Mayor Solomon. With the knights chasing after them, the monsters will not face attacks from the front and back to attack Lakeshire. Then, the only remaining path for them is to flee east along Stillwater Lake. Did we need you to tell us that? The nobles said coldly. Roger reached out and pulled out the blue flag. If we deliberately leave the east open during the attack, they will surely flee for their lives. When the time comes, we can ambush them from behind, completely minimizing the casualties. Although the wolves ridden by the orcs are large, they still have the weaknesses of wolves, which is insufficient endurance. After running wildly all the way, those wolves will almost be exhausted when they reach the lakeside road. And seeing a way out, those monsters will definitely be overjoyed. And at this time, if an ambush appears, they will fall into despair. Roger inserted the blue flag on Lakeside Road. Plus, with the wolves out of strength, how many monsters will be able to escape? Hearing Roger's question, everyone fell silent. Lothar gently tapped his chin. However, I only have one regiment of knights with me. The blitzkrieg can't be carried out. That's right. Exactly. The nobles nodded one after another, feeling a sense of relief. It wasn't that they couldn't come up with a clever plan like Roger's, it was just that they had too few soldiers to try such tactics. That's right, that's it. Just then, a hand stretched out from beside Roger. Lord Lothar, I have a way. John raised his hand high, almost jumping up. He said excitedly, there is a large Murloc tribe on the shore of Stillwater Lake. The Murlocs are very united. As long as there is a conflict with one Murloc, the surrounding Murlocs will come to help. My brother and I are hunters. As long as those monsters escape near the Murloc tribe, we will lure the Murloc tribe over and let those Murlocs stop those monsters. Everyone looked at each other. Could this work? Roger was also speechless. This John always had such wild ideas. Didn't he think about how far the Murloc tribe was from Redridge Mountains? The orcs would inevitably run close to Redridge Mountains when they escaped. They couldn't lure the Murlocs out for several thousand yards, could they? Did he really think this was a game where they could kite monsters to the main city? Lothar also found it incredible, asking uncertainly, how confident are you? You must know that this is related to the situation of the entire battle. 100% confident. Before Roger could speak, John said confidently, if we can't lure the Murlocs over, my brother and I will stand in front of those monsters. I didn't, don't talk nonsense. Good. Seeing John giving a military pledge, Lothar immediately waved his hand. Then it's decided. If you two can really do this, I will definitely report to the king and award you the honor you deserve. John's mouth grinned open. Lord Lothar, I only need your signature. Lothar said with a smile, I can give you the signature now. Really? Roger watched Lothar sign his brother's name, wishing he could push him away and tear John's mouth apart. You really are my good brother. Chapter 3. Roger led the excited John out of the military camp, and the noble officers hurriedly asked, Sir, you don't really believe the nonsense of those two commoners, do you? Lothar smiled and shook his head. How could he easily believe John's words? John looked like an impulsive kid who was full of hot air and not reliable at all. Google searched Can. What he valued was Roger. Roger was calm, collected, and resourceful. This mission was his test for Roger. If Roger passed, he wouldn't mind promoting Roger. After all, the kingdom of Stormwind needed fresh blood. The nobles had controlled the kingdom for too long and had lost their ambition. The rise of commoners like Roger could create a catfish effect, which would benefit the development of the kingdom of Stormwind. If Roger failed the test, he would just be a commoner, and the kingdom of Stormwind wouldn't suffer any loss. However, he wouldn't say these words to the nobles. Even if we fail, we won't suffer any losses, he said with a smile. But once we succeed, our gains will be much greater. Hearing this, the nobles revealed satisfied smiles. As expected, Sir Lothar was still one of the nobles. The promise just now was just to deceive 2 commoners into going to their deaths. All right. Prepare for battle, the enemy is coming soon. Yes. Compared to Stormwind City, Lakeshire was completely within reach. Therefore, after only sending some wolf riders for reconnaissance, Blackhand the Destroyer led his army straight in. He wasn't here to attack, but to take over Lakeshire. Passing through the mountain path, Lakeshire was faintly visible, as serene as a paradise. Looking at the vast still water lake, Blackhand the Destroyer silently calculated that he should be able to collect enough food to attack Stormwind City. Not only was the kingdom of Stormwind's supply line broken, but the orcs' supply line was also very strained. They had travelled a long distance, fighting all the way from the Black Morass through Deadwind Pass and Elwyn Forest. The supply line was terrifyingly long. If they hadn't constantly broken through human villages, towns, and farms to collect food and supplies on the spot, they would have run out of supplies long ago. That was why they needed the rich Lakeshire. Following the mountain road all the way down, Blackhand was already fantasizing about how to seize resources. Just then, the column stopped, and a wolf rider returned from the front. Warkif, at the end of the stone bridge, the humans have set up a defense line. They are preparing to resist. Blackhand sneered. Wouldn't it be better to obediently hand over the food? Did they have to force us to take it? Kill all the humans who dare to resist, and take the prisoners back to the dark portal. Aooo! The orcs roared, raising their weapons high, ready to attack. But just then, they suddenly heard a rumble. Rumble. It sounded like rolling thunder, getting louder and louder. But listening carefully, it was very fragmented. An orc turned his head and was immediately terrified. Human cavalry. The orcs turned their heads one after another, all dumbfounded. They saw countless cavalry rushing down from the high mountain, the speed so fast that they didn't even have time to react, and the road behind them was cut off. Engage! Engage! An orc chieftain shouted loudly, and the orcs at the rear quickly turned their wolves' heads, wanting to resist. However, the knights arrived in an instant, using their lances to pick and pierce one orc after another. Subsequently, countless cavalry charged into the orcs, countless orcs fell, and their dire wolves turned their heads and fled. The dire wolves' sense of danger far exceeded that of the orcs. Those dire wolves whose masters were still alive also joined the ranks of the fleeing, and the wolf riders' formation immediately collapsed. In this situation, facing the impact of elite knights, there was only one outcome, and that was death. Blackhand was furious, he wanted to resist. But the people around him hadn't gone crazy yet, they quickly patted Blackhand's dire wolf on the butt, and followed Blackhand to flee east. Seeing the orcs fleeing, Lothar immediately pointed east. Gavinrad, take your men and chase after them, killing as many enemies as possible. Understood. An older knight responded and led his men to chase east. Lothar waved to the others, follow me. Blackhand was exasperated. Since entering this world, he had never encountered such an inexplicable defeat. He couldn't figure out how a battle to take over that should have been very easy was defeated by a human knight order that popped out of nowhere. After thinking for a long time, he couldn't figure it out, so he could only attribute it to treacherous humans. No matter how much Blackhand gritted his teeth, defeat was defeat. The only thing he could do now was to get rid of the human pursuers. Fortunately, the dire wolf's acceleration was faster than the human warhorse, and it was no problem to shake off the human knights completely. Increase speed. Shake off the humans. Blackhand ordered. Soon, the human knights were hundreds of yards away. As long as they rushed out of the mountain pass and into the forest, they would be safe. Warhorses were strong in flat areas, but they were very prone to leg weakness in forests filled with fallen leaves. Dire wolves, because of their claws, were not good at fighting on flat ground, but were good at fighting in forests. The mountain pass was getting closer and closer, and the hope of survival was in sight. Blackhand was overjoyed and said loudly, rush out of the mountain pass and into the forest. If the humans dare to chase after us, then let them go and never return. None of the orcs were cowards, they shouted loudly, looking forward to the next battle. But their shouts also became a signal, and a voice came from the mountain pass. Oh, I am Train Kingish Sha'en. The orcs were startled and quickly reined in their dire wolves, looking forward in confusion. Then they saw two humans, carrying a huge wooden shield, running past them less than 100 yards ahead. Behind them, countless murlocs followed, constantly throwing the spears in their hands at them. What's going on? The orcs wanted to pull the reins, but the dire wolves couldn't stop at all in a rapid state, and crashed into the murloc ranks. GGMMMLMRMRGMG. The murlocs showed no fear at all when they saw these big guys, because their numbers far exceeded the orcs. For a time, countless spears and frost bolts shot over. Chapter 4. John. I'm going to kill you. Roger looked at his brother through gritted teeth. John didn't care at all. Every time he made Roger angry, Roger would say this. But Roger never actually did it. He couldn't bear to kill his adorable younger brother. Roger, was that fun just now? Did you remember the story of the Train King that you told me before? Looking at John's carefree appearance, Roger was completely speechless. Why did I end up with such a brother? I blame myself for telling him the story of the Train King in the first place. Achievement unlocked, Train King, reward +1 level, achievement points +1. Train King achievement? Roger raised his eyebrows. The system has an achievement system? He pulled John up the hillside and hid behind a large tree to avoid being caught by the murlocs. Although the murlocs and orcs were already fighting, some vengeful murlocs might still chase after them. After all, the two of them had set fire to more than a dozen murloc houses, leaving at least hundreds of murlocs homeless. John excitedly watched the fierce battle below. He didn't stay idle either, taking out his bow and shooting down at them. With his archery skills, it was all luck, but as long as he didn't go down there, Roger would let him do as he pleased. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Roger opened the system. Level +1, he understood very well, was used to upgrade warrior or hunter levels. But what are achievement points for? Opening the achievement interface, he quickly understood the use of achievement points. It turned out they were used to enhance skills. His current skills were only Stormwind Kingdom military swordsmanship, beginner, archery, beginner, trap making, beginner, and underwater combat, beginner. In the current situation, only enhancing archery could help. Without hesitation, he put the achievement point into archery. 3 enhancement directions popped up: increased range, increased attack, and increased accuracy. Looking at the battlefield below, it wasn't very far, the range was completely sufficient. Attack? Roger looked at the ordinary hunting bow he was using. How much more could the attack increase? He decisively chose to increase accuracy. Enhanced archery, skill 100 steps piercing willow acquired. 100 steps piercing willow, beginner passive, accuracy increased by 10%. Passive skill? Wouldn't that mean that every time he used archery skills in the future, he would have 10% more accuracy? That's amazing, isn't it? Just as he was thinking, a soft sound came, and then Roger felt the big tree behind him fall backward. He quickly rolled over and saw the tree slide down the hillside, leaving only a tree stump in front of him. The tree stump was covered with green energy, emitting a nauseating odor. Fell energy. Roger looked down the mountain and immediately saw an orc warlock condensing a shadow bolt, throwing it at him again. He quickly pushed John to the ground, dodging the shadow bolt. John shouted excitedly, "Roger, I just killed 3 monsters." Roger was speechless. No wonder the orc warlock was attacking them. It was all John's fault, that damned guy. Suppressing the urge to strangle John, Roger reached out and took John's hunting bow, rushing to another tree. The moment he hid behind the tree, he immediately added the level +1 to the hunter profession, and then added the extra skill point to 100 steps piercing willow. 100 steps piercing willow, proficient passive, accuracy increased by 20%. Seeing Roger pop out, he immediately raised his hand, wanting to release the shadow bolt. But the arrow arrived first, hitting the orc warlock's shoulder. The orc warlock staggered, and the shadow bolt flew away, hitting next to a murloc mage. The murloc mage was startled, and then he smelled the stench of fell energy, becoming even more angry. He condensed frost elements with both hands, launching a frostbolt at the orc warlock. Pa! The orc warlock was caught off guard and hit directly. The murloc mage's mana was weak, but it still affected him with the frost elements, slowing his movements for a few seconds. These few seconds allowed Roger to seize the opportunity. An arrow flew, directly piercing his forehead. Achievement unlocked, detestable fell energy, reward achievement points +1. Roger's eyes lit up. He didn't expect killing an orc warlock to unlock an achievement. Roger didn't look closely, hurriedly putting the achievement point into 100 steps piercing willow. Enhanced 100 steps piercing willow, attack increased. 100 steps piercing willow, proficient passive, accuracy increased by 20%, attack increased by 20%. Awesome! Isn't this equivalent to having a might aura? Should I try it? Ha ha ha, Roger, I killed another monster. John stood next to a big tree, laughing triumphantly, with a hunting bow in his hand at some point. Roger was speechless. Wasn't that his hunting bow? Didn't he just lose it? Where did this kid find it? At this moment, a dark shadow shot towards John. Roger quickly shot an arrow to block it. Pa! The arrow blocked the black shadow, which was a shadow bolt. But the arrow didn't completely stop it. At the moment the two arrows collided, the fell energy corroded the arrow, flying towards John with undiminished momentum. Roger's heart jumped into his throat. But the next second, he calmed down. John actually dodged back behind the tree nimbly, then stuck his head out, making faces at another orc warlock. Can't hit me, can't hit me. The orc warlock was furious, clenching his hands, condensing a large mass of fell energy. If this were released, it could definitely corrode the tree John was leaning on, just like before. Roger frowned. Dare to hit my brother? You're courting death. With a cold face, he drew an arrow and shot it at the orc warlock. Puff! The arrow pierced the orc warlock's throat, ending his sinful life. Black Hand, seeing that the two orc warlocks he brought were dead, was both shocked and terrified. He never expected that those two humans, who seemed like idiots just now, actually possessed such archery skills. Even the strongest hunters among the orcs couldn't have killed two warlocks in such a short time. Don't get entangled, follow me and fight our way out. The orcs wanted to get rid of the murlocs, but the murlocs were unwilling. In the time it took to fight, the murlocs had already lost hundreds of people. How could they not avenge such a great hatred? Moreover, the enemy was already afraid. How could they not pursue? Every murloc was a master of easy victories. They constantly launched attacks on the orcs, plunging them into the quagmire of a people's war. Just as the orcs were in a state of desperation, the human knights chasing from behind caught up. They didn't launch an attack immediately, but looked at the murlocs besieging the orcs with surprise, and then began to form ranks. Immediately afterwards, the servants led another warhorse, allowing the knights to change mounts. After preparing calmly, the knights then launched a charge. Chapter 5. Fall back. Don't engage. Black Hand roared, smashing the approaching murlocs into a bloody pulp with his spiked warhammer, charging through unhindered. Only then did the wolf riders follow, breaking out of the encirclement. If it weren't for their constant retreat, the dire wolves' stamina failing, and the fact that the dire wolves couldn't be armored, constantly being attacked by the murlocs, they might have broken through earlier. After all, the combat prowess of the orcs was completely unmatched by the murlocs. In fact, even a single elite squad of wolf riders could annihilate an entire murloc tribe. But alas, who told them to be tigers fallen into the plains? Rumble! The human knights formed a battle formation and charged, instantly wreaking havoc on any murlocs that stood in their path. There was no need for the human knights to attack, the armored war horses trampled these little guys into oblivion. If some cowardly murlocs hadn't noticed the knights' charge and fled in advance, these meritorious roadblocks would probably have been discarded after serving their purpose by the human knights. John's eyes gleamed. Roger, hurry up. Saying that, he sprinted along the hillside, shooting arrows at the fleeing orcs as he ran. Roger had no choice but to quickly follow. He imitated John, shooting arrows at the orcs while running. The precision bonus of his sharpshooting skill allowed him to have a good hit rate without needing to aim carefully. Before long, several orcs were shot down from their dire wolves and then submerged in the charging tide of knights. Gavinrad observed the battlefield while charging. He noticed that the orcs seemed to want to escape into the forest. He immediately made a decisive decision, changing his target. Drive these monsters onto the main road, don't let them enter the forest. The knights immediately adjusted their direction, flanking the wolf riders from the side and driving them towards the main road. How could exhausted dire wolves outrun war horses with full stamina? Soon, Gavinrad completed the encirclement. Except for Black Hand and a dozen others who escaped into the forest, the rest of the wolf riders were all driven onto the lakeside road. The wolf riders had no intention of fighting. Since they couldn't escape east, they would escape west. As long as they passed the triangular intersection, they could escape to Sunwood Forest. Many orcs were stationed in Sunwood Village, and they would be safe once they reached there. However, the wolf riders hadn't run west for long when they ran head-on into Lothar and the others. Kill! Lothar immediately ordered an attack, and the Knights of the Silver Hand launched a series of charges against the wolf riders. The wolf riders scattered and fled, breaking through Gavinrad's blockade and rushing into the forests on both sides. Those who couldn't rush into the forest were caught in a pincer attack by Lothar's and Gavinrad's forces and were quickly annihilated. While commanding the attack, Lothar ordered another lieutenant, Balver, take men to pursue the escapees, and be careful of the monster's counterattack. Yes. Young Balver was the son of a duke, but he was already an officer in the Knights of the Silver Hand, commanding a company of knights. He immediately gathered his men, bypassed the battlefield, and went to pursue the wolf riders in the forest. With the hope of survival, the dire wolves' speed increased significantly. Seeing the hope of survival, they were willing to run until their legs broke to escape the battlefield, otherwise, death awaited them. Watching that he could never catch up to the wolf riders, Balver was a little annoyed. The forest was really not suitable for galloping on horseback, and the war horses were armored, adding the weight of the knight, making it easy for their hooves to get stuck in slightly softer ground. However, he was unwilling to let the wolf riders escape just like that. In the battle just south of the stone bridge in Lakeside Town, he hadn't killed a single orc. If he didn't kill an orc, he wouldn't be able to accumulate any merit. But if he wanted to be promoted quickly, he needed outstanding achievements. Slowly accumulating seniority was really unworthy of his identity as the Duke's son. Lothar also wanted to give him a chance to show off, so he sent him to pursue them. But now that the opportunity to gain merit was about to slip away, how could Balver not be anxious? Just then, a running wolf rider suddenly fell from his dire wolf. Balver was overjoyed and immediately urged his warhorse to accelerate, his lance piercing through the orc's chest and hoisting him up. Balver was a little annoyed, but he didn't dwell on his annoyance. Instead, he looked around. Sure enough, he spotted two humans with bows and arrows on the ridge not far away. It was the Keshian brothers. Only now did he remember that these two brothers had actually completed that unbelievable roadblock mission, and he couldn't help but marvel in his heart. At the same time, he developed a sense of admiration, because he couldn't have done it if he had been asked to be the roadblock. Although he had the pride of a nobleman, he would not be jealous of others' strengths. More importantly, no matter how excellent these two were, they were just commoners and could not threaten his position at all. He could even use these two commoners, paying only a good attitude. Thinking of this, Balver immediately shouted to the two brothers, Keshian brothers, shoot their mounts, don't let them escape. Yes, sir. John loudly agreed and decisively turned his attack target to the dire wolves. His archery skills were not good enough to easily shoot the orcs on the dire wolves, as the targets were relatively small. But when shooting the dire wolves, the larger targets, his hit rate would significantly increase. Sure enough, after adjusting his target, John shot down several dire wolves in a row. Balver led his men to rush up and kill the orcs who had fallen to the ground. In a few minutes, Balver lost sight of the orcs and could only return near the ridge, cutting off the orcs' heads as a mark of their battle achievements. And only then did he realize that the orcs they had killed were not even half as many as the orcs shot down by the two brothers. These two brothers were indeed not ordinary people. Balver waited for the two brothers to come down from the mountain and immediately gave a knight's salute. Thank you, brave warriors. We were able to win this war with minimal casualties thanks to you both. John was overjoyed to receive praise. Ha ha ha, of course. Roger and I are the most powerful hunters in Lakeside Town. Roger rolled his eyes behind him. Fortunately, bragging didn't require taxes, or else the Keshian family would probably go bankrupt. If he hadn't been there to take care of him, this troublemaker John would have died long ago. This troublemaker. Forget it, I can't be bothered with him. Roger opened the system, and these words flashed on his title. Orc Hunter, Elite Title. When fighting orcs, there is a certain chance to discern the orcs' weaknesses. Chapter 6. When Roger first saw Stormwind, he was somewhat disappointed. Compared to the towering and majestic Stormwind in the game, the Stormwind before him was incredibly low quality. Not only were the statues of the 5 heroes of Outland not yet erected, but even the Valley of Heroes didn't exist. There were no granite gates, and the city was much smaller, only about the size of the old city of Stormwind in later years. Not to mention the exhilarating BGM that played when entering Stormwind in the game. The royal palace of Stormwind was built in the northern part of the city, not the later Stormwind Keep. As he passed through the city and walked towards the palace, Roger saw the distant harbour and the luxurious villas of the nobles and mages to the south. As heroes of the Redridge Mountains campaign, Roger and John's contributions were undeniable. Lothar fulfilled his promise and reported their situation to King Lane. King Lane ordered them to return to Stormwind with Lothar and receive the Medal of Valor. Not many people were present at the ceremony. Besides Lothar and a few noble knights like Balver, there were only guards from the palace. Clearly, for most nobles, the awarding of medals to two commoners was not worth witnessing. Roger was very dissatisfied with this. These nobles would get their comeuppance sooner or later. As for John, he was as cheerful as ever, as if he had won the lottery. King Lane was a kind elder, he looked at them amiably and personally pinned the Medal of Valor on their chests. Rogers, John, from now on you are warriors of Stormwind. I hope you will continue to protect the kingdom of Stormwind and its people. The kingdom needs young people like you. Yes, Your Majesty. John immediately replied, I will use my life to protect the kingdom of Stormwind, to protect Your Majesty. Listening to John's casual declaration, Roger almost rushed over to cover his mouth. This kid really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The fall of Stormwind was destined, how could it be protected just because they were there? And protect King Lane? Garona is a legendary assassin, how could a little brat like you protect the person she wants to kill? Arrogant. King Lane was very satisfied with John's words, but he didn't take them to heart. John looked like a greenhorn, unreliable in his actions, how could he believe his words? After chatting with the two brothers amiably for a few words, he turned to look at Lothar. Brother, how do you plan to arrange them? Lothar already had a plan in mind, and said, after several battles with the orcs, I have decided to reorganize the kingdom's army. According to the report from SI7, the orcs only have one type of spellcaster, called warlocks. They use fell energy and are very powerful, but they don't appear in ordinary units. The ordinary units of the orcs are composed of various clans, and each clan has a different combat style, but without exception, their combat styles are very simple. Therefore, we can form an army composed of multiple professions, which can completely overcome the shortcomings of single soldier combat capabilities. King Lane nodded, that's a good idea, you can implement it with confidence. I have already asked Todman to reorganize the army. As long as the army he builds has good results, I will promote this model to all the armies in the kingdom. I trust your work. Achievement obtained, Stormwind Champion title acquired, achievement points 2. Stormwind Champion, elite title, Warrior of Stormwind, within the territory of Stormwind, your combat ability is improved, and you have the ability to inspire soldiers of the same camp. This title and Orc Slayer each have their own advantages, and are evenly matched. Stormwind Champion is a regional title, only effective within the territory of Stormwind. This is its limitation, but it is also its advantage. As long as his enemies are not orcs but other creatures in the territory of Stormwind, it will also increase his combat ability. Orc Slayer is a racial title, only effective against orcs. However, it has no regional restrictions. Even outside of Stormwind, it can discover their weaknesses when fighting orcs. Moreover, Stormwind Champion can be used in close combat, and Orc Slayer can be used in ranged combat. Alternating between the two titles is enough for his current stage. But in this way, his achievement points must tend towards close combat. Strengthen Stormwind Kingdom military swordsmanship, skill increased, acquire Wujua Blades. Wujua Blades, beginner passive, skill increased by 10%. Strengthen 100 steps piercing Yang, range increased by 10%. 100 steps piercing Yang, proficient range increased by 20%, accuracy increased by 20%, attack power increased by 20%. With the addition of the two titles, Roger's strength has also been improved to a certain extent. However, he is still very weak, and he needs to become stronger. Lothar chatted with King Lane for a while, then walked to the two brothers. All right, you little fellows, come with me. Next, you will serve under Todman, he is also from Lakeshire, I believe you will get along very well. Todman? John asked excitedly, is it Uncle Todman? I know him, he is my father's friend. Oh? That's even better. Lothar said with a smile. With an acquaintance to take care of them, the two brothers will have a much greater chance of survival. After defeating the orcs, the two of them may grow into the backbone of the army, and may be able to fight against some small nobles at that time. Army reform is not a simple matter, and political reform is even more difficult. Every step must be taken carefully, otherwise, it will be difficult to deal with if you offend those big nobles. But I want to remind you, the army is not like other places. Although you know Todman will not be lenient with you in training. Don't worry, we will definitely complete the training. John nodded carelessly. Roger once said that sweating more during training will reduce bloodshed during battle. That's right. Lothar glanced at Roger unexpectedly. This older brother didn't show off, but he saw the problem more clearly than many people. Compared to his younger brother, he was more optimistic about the older brother's future. After leaving the palace, a military officer in his 30s had been waiting for a long time. Todman, these two little fellows from Lakeshire, assign them to your army. Yes, sir. Lieutenant Todman immediately saluted, then walked to Roger and John. Little Rogers, little John, it's nice to see you again. Next, you will listen to my command. Now go to the camp with me. In a few days, the recruited soldiers will arrive in Stormwind. These days I will carefully consider your duties. Thank you, Uncle Todman. John was very happy, because Todman mentioned duties, which meant that after they joined the army, they would not start from scratch, but would directly serve as officers. That's great. Chapter 7. Uncle Todman, will we be staying in Stormwind all the time? Roger asked with a frown. That's right. Until you complete your coordination training, you will be spending your time in the Stormwind barracks. Todman was not, as John had said, a friend of old man Kishan. Todman was, after all, a nobleman, and even a nobleman residing in Lakeshire was not someone a commoner could easily befriend. It was just that old man Kishan had always worked in Lakeshire, having been a guard when he was younger, and now assisting Mayor Solomon in managing security, so he had some dealings with the nobles in town. The nobles in Lakeshire were not as haughty as those in Stormwind, and they were still very kind when speaking to commoners. But that was all. Becoming friends with commoners was absolutely impossible. Especially now that Todman was working in Stormwind, if those meticulous nobles knew that Todman had a friendly relationship with commoners, he would definitely be seen as a disgrace by those proud nobles. Therefore, Todman and old man Kishan only had official business dealings, they only knew each other. The reason he treated the two brothers well was because of the warriors' badges they wore on their chests. Not to mention a minor noble like Todman, even a great noble would pretend to be kind, giving King Lane some face. Uncle Todman, please write a letter to Mayor Solomon, telling him to pay close attention to the movements of the orcs. Now that the orcs have been defeated this time, they will surely be enraged and send more troops to attack Lakeshire. Todman smiled and patted him on the shoulder. Little Rogers, put your heart back in your stomach. Sir Lothar had long anticipated that the orcs would continue to attack Lakeshire and had already had Mayor Solomon prepare. Once the orcs become powerful, everyone in Lakeshire will hide in Redridge Mountains. All right, come with me. I'll take you to the dorms. John came closer. Roger, didn't Uncle Todman say that Sir Lothar had already anticipated the orc attack? Lakeshire will definitely be fine. I hope so. Roger's worries did not diminish at all, but instead increased. Obviously, the Stormwind upper echelons underestimated the orcs' determination to attack. If the orcs really launched a large-scale attack, the residents of Lakeshire might not even have time to evacuate. Although Mayor Solomon is a smart man, he certainly wouldn't retreat without resistance. But once he resists, it will slow down the evacuation speed, and if the orcs quickly defeat the Lakeshire guards, the consequences would be unimaginable. Looking at John, who was gleefully brandishing his sword, Roger couldn't help but feel a little envious. If he could also be so naive, he wouldn't have so many worries. After becoming official soldiers of Stormwind, Roger and John both received a set of armor, a shield, and a longsword. The standard Stormwind guard set, which looked very handsome when worn. John liked this equipment so much that he didn't want to take it off after putting it on. But Roger was a little uncomfortable with the armor, it was too heavy and severely affected his agility. The limitless swordsmanship, which enhanced technique, required high agility. Wearing the armor was equivalent to disabling the limitless swordsmanship. Similarly weakened was the 100-step piercing willow skill. Archery was originally a physical activity, and wearing armor consumed most of his strength. He even had some difficulty drawing the bow, so how could he have the strength to aim? So, he found Todman. Roger explained the reason, and Todman pondered for a moment, feeling that his approach of issuing armor to everyone was not very correct. In addition to warriors, the newly formed army also had many hunters, and even apprentice mages would join. It was no problem for warriors to wear armor, but it seemed a bit difficult to have hunters and mages wear armor. However, if they didn't wear armor, how would the protection problem be solved? Sir, mages can use protection spells, and we can wear leather or chain mail. Although the protection ability is not as good as plate armor, it can also withstand some stray arrows and light attacks. Moreover, after our agility is improved, we can completely avoid the orcs' attacks. Todman. Avoid the orcs' attacks? Are you kidding me? Even a veteran wouldn't dare to say they could avoid the orcs' attacks when facing them. But, apart from what Roger said, Todman really didn't have any good ideas. While the new recruits hadn't arrived yet, Todman went to the quartermaster and urgently made a batch of chain mail, leather armor, and some weapons that hunters might need. Soon, the new recruits arrived. Stormwind recruited a batch of qualified soldiers from Lakeshire, Elwyn Forest, and Westfall. Tall warriors, skilled hunters, plus a batch of mage apprentices urgently trained by the Stormwind mages. A mysterious unit called A Company took shape in the Stormwind barracks. Roger and John became the squad leader and deputy squad leader of the first squad of the reconnaissance platoon, leading 7 hunters from Lakeshire. Every day, they were training reconnaissance skills, and Todman specially invited an excellent scout to teach everyone the skill Eagle Eye. Relying solely on the hunter's own eyesight could not complete reconnaissance. Only by learning Eagle Eye could one be a qualified scout. In addition, an excellent scout also needed to learn escape skills, disguise, trap making, and feigning death. Not long after, the news of the fall of Lakeshire came, making Roger even more anxious. Because the orcs had cut off all roads, no news about Lakeshire reached Stormwind. The entire Stormwind became restless, and everyone realized that war was coming. Having lost news of Old Man Kishan, John also lost his usual joy. He began to seriously learn the swordsmanship and archery that Roger taught, and seriously learn the Eagle Eye and escape skills that the old scout taught. He even desperately exercised his body to make himself stronger. Roger was afraid that he would ruin his body. John, you don't need to work so hard. John said seriously, I'm not strong enough. I want to go back to Lakeshire and find my parents. Roger, you think so too, right? You practice no less than me. Roger was silent. That's right, he also wanted to go back to Lakeshire to find his parents. Although he had transmigrated, Old Man Kishan and his wife had raised him for several years, and he had already regarded them as his real parents. If it weren't for Stormwind's strict military regulations, he might have already deserted. Not only the 2 brothers, but all the soldiers in the first squad became anxious, and they were equally worried about the safety of their loved ones. It was just that they couldn't do anything now, they could only desperately train and enhance their strength. A month later, the orcs began to attack Elwyn Forest, heading all the way to Stormwind. Chapter 8. The orcs advanced rapidly. In less than half a month, they had captured the Eastvale logging camp and most of the farms in Elwyn Forest. They had also defeated the Stormwind army guarding Goldshire and were now advancing towards Stormwind City. King Lane summoned the nobles and his advisory council to discuss countermeasures. Your Majesty, immediately summon the army from Westfall to support us. A high-ranking noble's suggestion was interrupted by a military advisor. Westfall only has less than 2,000 soldiers. Even if they come to support us, it won't be enough to fill the orcs' teeth. Then what do you suggest? Are we just going to watch Stormwind City fall? The noble questioned. The walls of Stormwind City are perfectly capable of withstanding the orcs' attack. Have you not seen the intelligence reports? The orcs have launched an army of tens of thousands this time. And what about Stormwind City now? We don't even have 5,000 men. What are we going to defend with? Sir Lothar will soon withdraw to Stormwind City. With his knights, we will have enough troops to defend the city. Knights? Do you expect them to ride horses on the city walls? Just as the two were arguing heatedly, a guard ran in. Your Majesty, Sir Lothar has returned. Behind the guard, Lothar, covered in blood, strode into the palace. Time was of the essence, he couldn't wait for King Lane to summon him. King Lane was overjoyed and went to greet him. He had heard enough of the ministers bickering. He could usually tolerate the arguments because the fiercer the ministers argued, the more stable his throne was. But now, the arguments only showed that they had no solution to the orcs' attack. My brother, I am relieved to see you return safely. Lothar glanced at the ministers before saluting King Lane. Your Majesty, the orcs are about to besiege the city. I know. King Lane said, that's why I gathered everyone to discuss how to defend Stormwind City. What's the outcome of the discussion? Lothar asked. King Lane spread his hands, no results yet. Lothar was not surprised. These corrupt nobles were completely useless, having long abandoned the glory of their ancestors. They were good at infighting but knew nothing about defending against foreign enemies. Your Majesty, don't worry. I have already sent someone to summon Tordman. He will bring people over soon. Tordman. King Lane was puzzled, that Tordman from Lakeside. That's right. Not only Lane was puzzled, but the nobles were also very confused. They had no idea why Lothar would summon a minor noble from Lakeside. Was he qualified to attend high-level meetings? However, they dared not disobey Lothar's orders. Lothar now controlled all the military power in Stormwind City, and it would be too easy to deal with them. Soon, Tordman walked in with 2 soldiers. The nobles were furious. It was already bad enough to summon Tordman, a minor noble, to such an occasion, but what right did 2 common soldiers have to stand here? The nobles were about to rebuke the 2 commoners, but before they could speak, they saw the medals on their chests. Medals of Valor? When did Stormwind City have commoners who earned the Medal of Valor? Clearly, they had long forgotten about Roger and John. Your Majesty. Roger and John saluted with Tordman and then stood silently to the side. They had no idea why Lothar had summoned them to the palace, but seeing the bloodstains on Lothar's body, it was clear that the orcs were not far away. Instead of organizing the city's defense at this time, they were still gathering in the palace. It would be an outrage if Stormwind City wasn't breached. Roger. Lothar suddenly beckoned to Roger. Roger was stunned and looked at Tordman in confusion. Tordman gestured for him to go forward. Roger had no choice but to walk over. Commander. Lothar said to King Lane, Your Majesty, you should still remember Roger, right? King Lane looked at Roger in surprise. He had not expected Lothar to have such a high opinion of Roger. The palace became noisy. The nobles had not expected Lothar to say this. They could not accept Lothar's statement at all. How could a commoner be a master strategist? Had he attended military school? Had he studied tactics? Roger was also stunned, not because of Lothar's sudden praise, but because Lothar's praise triggered a response from the system. Received Lothar's recognition, obtained the title Master Strategist, obtained 2 achievement points. Master Strategist, elite title, formulate the most appropriate tactics based on the battlefield intelligence you have. The more intelligence you have, the faster you can formulate tactics, and the more perfect the tactics will be. Enhanced Woji swordsmanship, strength increased by 10%, agility increased by 10%. John was beaming with pride. He had recovered from his depression in recent days and gradually regained his optimism. He had always been proud of Roger, and now that Roger had received praise from his idol Lothar, he shared in the glory. Tordman was surprised. He knew that Lothar valued Roger very much, but he had not expected Lothar to value Roger so highly. Roger, the orcs are about to attack Stormwind City. This time, they have launched an army of tens of thousands. I suffered a defeat in Goldshire, which has affected the morale of Stormwind City and is very detrimental to the city's defense. I plan to take the knights to patrol outside and harass the orcs' siege forces before they attack, but I am worried about the city, so I called you here. If you have any tactics, you can tell His Majesty the King. Roger was silent for a moment. Even if he didn't consider the title Lothar had given him, he wouldn't allow the orcs to breach Stormwind City for his own safety. So, he turned to look at the sand table. As soon as Lothar saw this, he immediately took the lead and walked over, presenting the intelligence he knew on the sand table. King Lane followed, looking at Roger nervously. Although he had Lothar's endorsement, he was still skeptical. The nobles also gathered around, wanting to see how much real skill this so-called master strategist had. As a veteran player of Warcraft, Roger was extremely familiar with the map of Elwyn Forest. After just one glance, he had already made a judgment on the battlefield situation. Sir Lothar, remember your choice in Redridge Mountains? How about we do another rear encirclement this time? Chapter 9. Flanking from the rear. Lothar's expression shifted as he turned to look at the sand table. The orcs were in Goldshire and would soon reach the walls of Stormwind City. If they wanted to outflank the orcs, the only route was to sail by sea to the Westfall land and then strike Goldshire from Moonbrook. Lothar's eyes lit up, and he immediately simulated his idea on the sand table. He planted a small flag representing the knights in Goldshire and said excitedly, "As long as we retake Goldshire, the orcs' supply line will be cut off. When they discover their rear is cut off, they will inevitably panic. Then, the knights can strike from behind, and the Stormwind City guards can come out to fight, creating a pincer attack that will surely defeat the orcs." King Lane also recognized the key point. "Lothar, how long will it take you to get around to Westfall?" 3 days. Lothar said firmly. "Good. I will hold out for 3 days." King Lane unhesitatingly trusted his brother. "Time is of the essence, I will act immediately." Lothar was a man of action and immediately ordered, "Bolvar, you immediately notify the docks and have them prepare the ships and supplies. Reginald, have all the knights gather at the docks, we will rest on the ships." "Yes." Bolvar and Reginald immediately accepted the order and hurried out of the palace. Lothar looked at Thoradin. "This time, your army will also move with me." "Yes." Thoradin excitedly accepted the order, waved to call the Kishan brothers, and returned to the barracks. Watching Roger leave, King Lane seemed thoughtful and waved to summon a servant, whispering some words to him. The servant nodded and quickly left through a side door. John couldn't help but say as he put on his chain mail, "Roger, once we defeat the orcs, we'll go back to Lakeshire." This time, Roger did not refute, but nodded forcefully. The other soldiers of Reconnaissance Platoon 1 also looked solemn, clearly harboring the same thought. Carrying his bow and survival knife, Roger organized the team, preparing to meet up with Thoradin. Just then, a servant from the palace beckoned him over. "Captain Rogers." The servant reached out and presented Roger with a delicately crafted bow. "This is a gift from His Majesty the King. It is an elven hunting bow from His Majesty's personal collection. His Majesty hopes that you can use it to kill more enemies." Roger raised an eyebrow slightly. This should be a reward for his strategy, just like getting rewards for completing tasks in a game. So, he accepted the elven hunting bow with peace of mind and examined it carefully. Legend has it that the forests where the elves live are full of maple trees, which grow under the nourishment of magic all year round, making them easily conductive to magic. The elves use maple branches to make bows and arrows, which can be imbued with magic, making the arrows more lethal. Elven hunting bow, fine grade weapon. When using this bow to shoot arrows, it is easier to draw the bowstring, the arrows are faster, and there is a chance to deal arcane damage. Good stuff. Roger nodded in satisfaction. It took less effort to draw the bow, so he could shoot more arrows. The faster the arrows, the greater the lethality. Although arcane damage was not always present, it was better than nothing. In the event of a strong enemy, if luck broke out, he might be able to kill the enemy unexpectedly. The servant stared at Roger in astonishment. "This was a gift from the king, didn't you have any expression?" Roger completely ignored his gaze, directly pulled out the hunting bow from his back, and inserted the elven hunting bow into his backpack. He did not throw away the replaced hunting bow. Before he got used to the elven hunting bow, he would still use the original hunting bow to kill enemies. "Let's go, the officers have been waiting for a long time." After speaking, he led John and the others to the gathering team in the distance. Thoradin had indeed been waiting for a while, but he didn't say much when he saw the palace servant stopping Roger. He directly let Roger and others join the ranks, and then said loudly, "I know that you have only joined the army recently, and the training time is still short, so you shouldn't be on the battlefield immediately. But the war has come, the evil orcs have occupied our homeland, slaughtering our people. Kill all the orcs." Thoradin's departure oath was considered successful, at least everyone's emotions had been mobilized, temporarily forgetting the terror of the battlefield. When someone came back to their senses, everyone was already on the ship, heading for Westfall. I'm a little scared." New recruits inevitably have fears. Roger didn't say anything. John sat over, putting his arm around the new recruit's shoulder. "Don't worry, just do what we trained, you can completely defeat the orcs." "But, there are so many orcs. We have a lot of people too." John continued to persuade, "Look around, so many of us are by your side, not less than the orcs." The new recruit looked at the people around him, and the fear in his heart weakened slightly. "Yes. I still have so many comrades, the orcs shouldn't be that scary, right?" Roger shook his head gently. John was completely wasting his effort, such a new recruit was destined not to survive on the battlefield. It wasn't that Roger was cold-blooded, but the orcs were very good at fighting, and if they seized the opportunity, they could even kill demigods. Such a new recruit with psychological defects was completely delivering food on the battlefield. The terrain of Westfall is relatively unique. Overall, it is a not very high coastal plateau. A large number of murlocs live on the coastline, and after going to the plateau, it is the territory of the gnolls. These two races occupy a large amount of land in Westfall, and lone adventurers who stray into it will become the breakfast of the murlocs and gnolls. Fortunately, this time they were passing through the territory of the murlocs and gnolls. The fleet sailed east and stopped in the bay. The next morning, they approached the shore after they could clearly see the landing point. As a reconnaissance unit, Roger and others landed first to check the landing environment and explore the top of the mountain. Roger led people to find a gentle slope. After climbing the plateau, he found a farm nearby. The owner of the farm was called Jason. Jason told him that not far ahead was the main road of Westfall. Going east along the road, they could reach Moonbrook. Roger unfolded the map, looked at the current location, and immediately decided to scout towards Moonbrook. He called over a subordinate and asked him to send the obtained information back to the beach first, and then led people to approach Moonbrook. Several hours later, they arrived near Moonbrook. This fortress was originally used to defend against gnoll invasions, but now it has been occupied by orcs. Through reconnaissance, Roger discovered that the orcs did not value this place very much, and there were only a few dozen orcs guarding it. Obviously, the orcs knew that there were not many human soldiers in Westfall, so they made such an arrangement. This was obviously good news. Chapter 10. With few orcs guarding it, the main force could completely ignore this place and march directly into Goldshire. There was no fear of the orcs here reporting to Stormwind, because the knights would definitely be able to take Goldshire before the orc reinforcements arrived. If these orcs went to report, it would actually make Stormwind safer. In fact, the knights even had time to set up some ambushes. In the afternoon, the hunters Roger had sent out returned, finding them by following the marks Roger had left. Sir Lothar has decided to go directly through Westbrook Garrison. He wants us to go directly to Goldshire for reconnaissance. Let's go. Roger didn't ask what to do about the orcs at Westbrook Garrison. With thousands of knights, a single charge could wipe out those few dozen orcs. If he wasted time here, he would likely arrive at Goldshire later than the knights, in which case the knights would attack Goldshire without any intelligence. Although the knights could still take Goldshire, the price they paid would be much greater. Leading the hunters, Roger quickly moved through the forest. Relying on his sense of direction from playing the game and the hunter's intuition, he rushed towards Goldshire. Before dark, they finally saw the outline of Goldshire. Roger stopped and gathered the hunters. John, take some people to wait for Sir Lothar on the main road. The rest of you come with me, get close to Goldshire, and occupy the high ground to observe the situation inside. Be careful, don't alarm the orcs inside. The others nodded and split up. John didn't object either. He knew his reckless personality wasn't suitable for being a scout. Orc figures were constantly moving through the streets, but the total number wasn't very large. Obviously, the orcs hadn't expected the Kingdom of Stormwind to launch a surprise attack here. The orcs' individual combat power was indeed strong, and they were fearless in battle. However, their muscles had grown into their brains, and they knew nothing about tactics. At least before Orgrim Doomhammer became Warkif, the orcs were all blockheads. An hour later, Roger saw Lothar, who had just arrived. Hearing Roger's report, Lothar immediately ordered, "Order all knights, prepare for battle. Todman, take your men and attack Goldshire, trying to lure the orcs out of the buildings as much as possible." "Yes." Todman nodded and waved to Roger, "A company, follow me." More than 100 men from A company quickly followed, forming ranks as they ran. The warriors with shields were in front, and the hunters, mages, and priests were behind, forming a standard warrior-hunter-mage-priest combination. Roger, holding his elven hunting bow, hid in the woods on both sides of the road with John and the others, constantly watching the movements of the orcs in Goldshire. Awoo! A wolf howl immediately stirred up a commotion in Goldshire. The orcs put down their work, picked up their weapons, rushed out of their houses, and after identifying the direction, charged towards A company. The orcs' almost roaring language and ferocious faces, eager to eat people, made the recruits of A company at a loss. Obviously, they hadn't mentally prepared to fight the orcs. They had just followed along, habitually obeying orders. Attack! Todman didn't freeze. He was a battle-hardened warrior. Hearing the order, everyone subconsciously launched an attack. The first to attack were the hunter's arrows. The arrows were already on the bows, and the attack was completed as soon as they were released. However, the arrows didn't have much force, and some even just landed on the orc's path. Hoo. Looking at the weak arrows, the orcs couldn't help but laugh. Even the little cubs in the tribe back home wouldn't shoot arrows like that. Just then, a sharp arrow viciously shot into an orc's mouth. The orc's laughter stopped abruptly. The orcs looked in the direction the arrow came from and saw more than a dozen hunters appearing in the woods on both sides, looking at them with hateful eyes, and then releasing the bowstrings in their hands. The fall of Lakeshire had filled Roger's men with hatred. They couldn't wait to swallow all the orcs alive. The orcs' combat instincts were quite sharp, either dodging directly or waving their weapons to block the arrows. Except for Roger, no orc was harmed. However, the next moment, the orcs' faces changed color. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. More than a dozen fireballs shot over and hit the orcs' ranks. Boom boom boom. The fireballs exploded, instantly blasting the orcs away. As the mage's most damaging spell, the orcs directly hit by the fireballs were instantly charred, and the orcs within the fireball's explosion range were also injured. Charge! Todman seized the opportunity and led the warriors to charge towards the chaotic orcs. For a time, arrows and spells flew together, accompanying the warriors to kill the orcs. Although the recruits were still afraid of the orcs, they had no problem fighting a favorable battle. The orcs who rushed out of Goldshire first suffered heavy casualties. At this time, large groups of orcs rushed out of Goldshire, numbering 200 or 300. They roared and launched a charge, vowing to kill all the humans who dared to challenge the tribe's warriors. Seeing that the orcs were numerous and powerful, the recruits' earlier prestige disappeared, and many people subconsciously wanted to escape. Todman shouted repeatedly, "No retreat, hold your ground. Anyone who retreats will be punished by military law." Under Todman's threat, the recruits could only bite the bullet and raise their shields, watching the orcs get closer and closer. Waiting for death is a very terrible thing, even more so than death itself. Just when the recruits were about to give up, a thunderous sound of horses' hooves suddenly rang out from behind. Todman immediately ordered, "Clear the road." The recruits were relieved and turned to flee to the woods on both sides. Countless cavalry charged along the road, lowering their lances and killing the stunned orcs. Faced with the cavalry's charge, the orcs turned and ran. Although they were fearless, it didn't mean they wanted to die. After all, they were intelligent creatures, and they also wanted to die meaningfully, to die with value. But it was too late. The knights rushed into Goldshire like a sweeping autumn wind, and all the orcs on the road either died under the lances or were trampled to death by the horses' hooves. Only those orcs who hid in the woods were lucky enough to escape, but they were quickly attacked by A Company. Dealing with these stray dogs, A Company's recruits could do it with ease. Roger played a supporting role, but still gained a lot. Both the hunter and the warrior leveled up by 1. Chapter 11. After taking Goldshire, Lothar began to deal with the orcs attacking Stormwind. Roger was not sent to scout this time because Lothar needed him as an advisor. Actually, there was no need for scouting, because someone brought information about the orcs. SI-7, the assassin organization of Stormwind. The reason it wasn't an intelligence organization was that the purpose of establishing this organization from the beginning was to help the Kingdom of Stormwind deal with some shady matters. Legend has it that on the first day of its establishment, its founder, Variesa Sanguinar, assassinated a corrupt High Elf mayor. After the opening of the Dark Portal, SI-7 also wanted to spy on Orcish intelligence. But they quickly lost a large number of people because they were assassins, not spies. So, Variesa told SI-7 to focus on assassinating high-ranking orcs. At the same time, she also began training assassins' ability to gather intelligence. Gathering intelligence on the orcs outside Stormwind was SI-7's first battle in its transformation. This legendary assassin personally went out and brought the intelligence Lothar needed on time. "I set fire to the orcs' food carts, and their food is probably only enough for 3 days, Variesa said concisely. "There's no need to move them all away. It's also possible to put some poison on them," Roger said lightly. Lothar hesitated a little. "Poison? Leave this to me." Poisoning was a very simple matter for SI-7. However, Variesa took a deep look at Roger while answering. This young man was ruthless and would definitely be a ruthless character in the future. Outside Stormwind, in the Orcish camp. The chiefs of the various clans were arguing fiercely, obviously knowing that the food had been burned. Enough! Blackhand shouted, stopping everyone. He was the one who had a headache about the food being burned. The remaining food was not even enough for retreat. The only way he could think of was to take Stormwind before the food ran out and rely on Stormwind's food to appease the army. However, there was still a powerful cavalry behind them, ready to attack them at any time. Attacking Stormwind in this situation was just courting death. They must withdraw their troops. But how should they withdraw? Blackhand scanned the chiefs, but saw arrogant faces. Since the last defeat at Redridge Mountains, these chiefs had begun to disregard him, the Warkiff. If he didn't rely on Gul'dan's Shadow Council, these chiefs would definitely not have followed him to attack Stormwind. If they were defeated again, many of these chiefs would be eyeing the position of Warkiff, right? Thinking of this, Blackhand slowly said, things have come to this point, and we have no way to continue attacking Stormwind. The chiefs clamored again, obviously dissatisfied with Blackhand's words. Blackhand raised his hand, stopping the clamor, although we are withdrawing our troops, we will not give the humans any advantage. Not far to the southeast, there is an orchard. As long as we occupy it, even without food, we can satisfy our hunger with fruit. We can also obtain a lot of meat by hunting along the way. As long as we persist in passing through the forest, we will reach Westfall Brigade. After passing Westfall Brigade, there are a large number of farms in the forest, and the food problem can be solved. When the time comes, if the humans dare to chase after us, we will let the humans know the power of the Horde. Hearing this, the chiefs suppressed their grievances. Go back and prepare. We must evacuate as soon as possible. The chiefs left quickly, but Blackhand secretly left the chieftain of the Burning Blade clan behind. Dal, take your people and follow me closely. If we encounter resistance, the Burning Blade clan will pave the way for me. Dal Three Blades nodded, the Burning Blade clan will fight for you, Warkiff. The Burning Blade clan was the clan with the most warrior honor. They possessed powerful combat skills and the ability to control flames. The orc hero Blademaster in Warcraft was from the Burning Blade clan. The representative figure of the Blademaster, Grom Hellscream, was actually just a warrior and could not use mirror image and wind walk at all. It was no exaggeration to say that the Burning Blade clan was the strongest combat power of the Horde. The orcs withdrew their troops, and Stormwind quickly discovered this. King Lane immediately ordered the army to prepare for an attack, planning to cooperate with Lothar from the inside and outside. However, Bolvar did not lead his troops to attack the Horde, but retreated backward, opening the road to the forest to the south. Bolvar had just sent someone to send a letter to Lothar when he saw King Lane leading the army aggressively. Bolvar, where is Lothar? Why aren't you attacking the orcs? This was a very rare opportunity to severely damage the orcs, and even King Lane, with his good self-restraint, couldn't help it. Bolvar quickly told King Lane Roger's plan, and King Lane's expression became strange. He had never thought that a war could be fought like this. When the orcs entered the forest, they saw piles of ashes from time to time. After some orcs checked, they quickly reported to Blackhand. Warkiff, the humans have killed all the animals in this area and burned the corpses. Blackhand's face was very ugly when he heard this. Without food, the orcs would be lucky to make it to Westfall Brigade. Speed up and get to the orchard as soon as possible. The orcs sped up, and finally arrived at the orchard the next day. There were some human soldiers in the orchard who were moving fruit. When they saw the orcs coming, they immediately threw away the fruit and ran away. After checking, Blackhand was very happy. There was a whole warehouse of fruit in the orchard, enough for the orcs to eat for 10 days. Moreover, the fruit had been used with magic to keep it fresh all the time. Pass down the order, everyone's rations will be halved, and the reduced part will be supplemented with fruit. After eating, we will set off immediately and strive to reach Westfall Brigade before dark. Chapter 12. The orcs had a hearty meal, and perhaps because there were many apples among the fruits, the orcs were all full of energy. Set off immediately. Once we reach West Spring Fortress, we won't have to fear the human cavalry. Blackhand was also full of ambition. Easily taking the orchard filled him with hope for the upcoming campaign. However, he did not take it lightly and once again called Dare Bloodblade to his side. Lead the Fireblade clan to clear the way ahead, and I will follow closely behind you. Dare Bloodblade accepted the order and led the Fireblade Blademasters ahead of the Blackrock clan. After walking for about an hour, suddenly an orc collapsed in pain, clutching his stomach and rolling on the ground. Google searched Khan. What's going on? The chieftain walked over to check. He found the orc covered in sweat, clenching his teeth, and constantly spitting out white foam from his mouth. This is poisoning. But how was he poisoned? They only ate at the orchard. Not good. The chieftain suddenly stood up, but felt a dizzy spell and a sharp pain in his abdomen. His legs weakened, and he knelt directly on the ground. He was also poisoned. Not only that, but nearly half of the orcs were poisoned. Blackhand looked at the orcs rolling on the ground, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. Damn humans, so despicable. Not many of the poisoned orcs died directly, but a small half of those who didn't die collapsed and completely lost their combat power. The remaining majority could still fight, but they also had to endure the poison's effects. If they couldn't detoxify quickly, they would probably lose their combat power as well. Take the survivors and get to West Spring Fortress as quickly as possible. Blackhand shouted loudly. A warrior's intuition told him that if they were attacked by humans at this time, they would lose thousands of orcs and their lives. He didn't care about the orcs of other clans, but he couldn't ignore the Blackrock clan, as they were his foundation. At this moment, countless human soldiers rushed out of the forest and launched an attack on the orcs. Arrows, muskets, and magic, carrying human hatred, poured into the orc ranks. Dare Bloodblade's expression was stern as he led the Fireblade Blademasters who could still stand and quickly ran forward. There was a team of human soldiers blocking their advance with bows and muskets. However, the Fireblade Blademasters didn't care about these attacks at all. They constantly dodged the arrows and bullets, gradually approaching the human soldiers, and suddenly disappeared before their eyes. What? The human soldiers were stunned, obviously not expecting this situation. Wind walk. The Fireblade Blademasters quickly approached the human soldiers, suddenly leaping out in front of them, their long swords slashing down, killing the entire team of human soldiers. Dare Bloodblade didn't even look at the corpses under his feet and continued to run wildly forward with the Fireblade Blademasters. They had to open a path for the Warkiff. Blackhand led the Blackrock clan closely behind, completely disregarding the lives and deaths of the other clans. The warriors of the other clans resisted for a while, but after discovering that Blackhand had abandoned them, they also turned around and fled. As for their companions on the ground, they could only fend for themselves. The human soldiers swarmed up, hacking to death the orcs on the ground who had lost their combat power and become weak. Bolvar signaled to King Lane and led the cavalry to pursue. The orcs who fell behind were all mildly poisoned. The poison made it impossible for them to run at full speed, and they could only be chased and killed by the knights. A Fireblade Blademaster was also abandoned, but he had no complaints. He turned his head and glanced at the approaching human cavalry, and the Blademaster said to the several apprentices beside him, "We split up and run. While protecting ourselves, try to delay the enemy's pursuit speed as much as possible." Yes. The apprentices, who had been educated in the glory of warriors since childhood, agreed without hesitation. Even if they died, they would help their companions escape. After dispersing, the Fireblade Blademaster did not leave the main force but continued to rescue other fleeing orcs. He would avoid large groups of humans, and when he encountered small teams of enemies, he would use Windwalk and Mirror Image to sneak attack. The Windwalk that could turn invisible, the Mirror Image that could confuse the enemy, coupled with superb combat skills, the Fireblade Blademaster could easily deal with small groups of human soldiers, even cavalry. Swish! The Fireblade Blademaster once again killed a small team of human soldiers and was about to look for the next target when he suddenly felt danger behind him. He lunged forward, but his neck was still cut open by a sharp weapon, and blood flowed profusely. Turning around sharply in the air, the Fireblade Blademaster saw the enemy who had ambushed him, an old human woman. Surprisingly, Pathonia looked at the orc in front of her. She had never missed a surefire sneak attack before, and this was the first time she had encountered it. After thinking about it, she did not continue to attack but slowly retreated behind a tree and entered stealth mode. A warrior's intuition told the Fireblade Blademaster that this old human woman was not to be trifled with. So he didn't stop and turned to run. Windwalk was activated, trying to shake off the old woman as much as possible. After running for more than 10 minutes, the Fireblade Blademaster felt that he was safe and stopped. The wound on the back of his neck was still bleeding constantly, and the excessive blood loss made him a little dazed. He took out his Fireblade rune and activated the flame power on it, burning the wound. The pain gradually woke him up, and he knew that he had to rest for a while and recover his strength before he could continue fighting. Reaching out and taking out an apple, the Fireblade master disgustedly threw it on the ground. He took out a piece of dried meat from his pocket and took a difficult bite. But his mouth was too dry, and the dried meat was difficult to swallow. Listening carefully, there should be a water source not far away. The Fireblade master moved his tired body and began to search. Soon, he found a river, which should be the river flowing to West Spring Fortress. He took a few quick steps, rushed to the river, plunged his head into the river, and drank heartily. The Fireblade master didn't notice at all, or perhaps the severity of his injuries made him dizzy and he had lost the vigilance that a warrior should have. A figure followed him to the river from afar and slowly raised the bow and arrow in his hand. Swish! A sharp arrow pierced fiercely into his back, and the huge force pushed him to turn over and fall into the river. That figure rushed out of the forest. It was Roger. Roger ran forward while quickly drawing out arrows, constantly shooting at the place where the Fireblade master fell into the water. He wanted to kill the Fireblade master before he could react. Otherwise, with his current strength, even if the Fireblade master was seriously injured, he might not be his opponent. Chapter 13. After Bavar sent back the message, Roger followed Lothar to Westfall Keep. Lothar had absolutely no problem with beating a drowning dog. So, before even reaching Westfall Keep, Roger requested to leave the team and search for Todman. He wanted to stay by John's side during such a big battle, otherwise, with his reckless nature, who knew what kind of trouble he would stir up again. However, before finding a company, Roger first encountered a large group of orcs. Looking at the fierce blade masters, Roger didn't dare to get close and could only go around them. To avoid the large orc force, Roger's route went further and further west, and he soon reached the river. There were few orcs on this side of the river, so Roger planned to go north along the river and safely find the main force. Before long, he saw an orc suddenly appear in front of him, actually a lone blade master. A boss like the blade master was a walking experience pack. However, even if seriously injured, the blade master was still a hero-level powerhouse, not so easy to deal with. Roger didn't act rashly, but observed the surrounding terrain to see if there was anything he could use. After searching for a long time without finding anything, just as Roger was about to give up, the blade master actually moved. Roger quickly followed behind and saw the blade master reach the river, then plunged his head into the water without any precautions. The opportunity had come. Roger didn't hesitate and shot him into the river with an arrow, then continued to attack. At this moment, the river suddenly exploded, and a figure jumped out, with 5 or 6 arrows stuck in his body. It was the blade master. Swish! The blade master swayed, and in mid-air, he turned into 4, jumping ashore and rushing towards Roger. Roger's expression changed slightly, and he quickly drew 3 arrows from his quiver, shooting them out extremely fast. This was a rapid-fire arrow technique he had developed himself, but because of the short time, it hadn't formed into a skill. Fortunately, in this critical moment, Roger performed exceptionally and shot 3 arrows in succession. The 3 arrows hit 3 blade masters, but all of them passed through the blade masters' bodies, shattering the illusions. Damn it! I didn't guess right with 3/4 of the probability. Roger threw away the elven hunter bow, quickly drew his sword and took up his shield, preparing to meet the blade master's attack. A cold smile appeared on the blade master's pale face, and he suddenly disappeared from Roger's sight. Roger's expression changed again. He knew too much about wind walk. Even if it wasn't as magical as in the game, it was still deadly. His mind raced, wanting to fight an invisible enemy. Perception was very important. In the game, humans had a perception bonus, but Roger wouldn't entrust his life to illusory racial talents. Then, Roger raised his shield and suddenly launched a charge forward. Rushing to the river at high speed, Roger suddenly felt a crisis and immediately jumped up, turning around in mid-air and throwing the shield out hard. Bang! A sharp blade cut the shield in half, and the blade master's figure also appeared in mid-air, slamming into Roger's body. The two fell into the lake. The blade master wanted to continue attacking, but Roger seemed like a fish, grabbing him first. Normally, let alone one Roger, even 10 Rogers couldn't trap the blade master. But now it was different. The blade master was first poisoned, then lost too much blood, and his strength was greatly reduced. Moreover, because of using fire elements, his swimming skills weren't very good, let alone fighting in the water. Roger was different. He had played in still water lake all year round and was a very good swimmer. In addition, he had the underwater combat skill, although it was at the beginner level, it still gave him an advantage. Roger jumped up suddenly, pressing the blademaster into the water. Suffocation made the blademaster struggle desperately, pushing Roger away. He quickly swam upwards, greedily breathing the air. But before he could finish taking a breath, he was grabbed by Roger again and dragged into the water. The blademaster was furious and activated the firebrand rune, wanting to kill Roger. But as soon as the flames ignited, he and his sword were pulled into the water by Roger. Sizzle! The flames were extinguished by the river water, and the blademaster suffocated again. The blademaster constantly used Windwalk and Mirror Image, trying to escape. But Roger held on to him tightly, and Windwalk and Mirror Image were useless. After struggling several times, the blademaster finally became exhausted and stopped moving. Roger surfaced and gasped for a few breaths, then returned to the water again, drew his survival knife from his leg, and cut the blademaster's throat. Killed Firebrand Blademaster, obtained Firebrand Blademaster heritage. Roger was stunned for a moment. Firebrand Blademaster heritage? Could it be a hero class? He really wanted to figure out this inheritance now, but the environment didn't allow it. He dragged the Blademaster's body to the surface, then laboriously pulled it ashore. Using eagle eye technique to look into the forest, there were no orcs nearby. Only then did he feel relieved to loot the Blademaster's body, putting the scattered items into his bag, carrying the Blademaster's weapon, picking up the elven hunter bow, and quickly running north. After leaving the battlefield, he quickly climbed a big tree, and after confirming that it was safe, he began to study the inheritance. Opening the system interface, the warrior leveled up twice, reaching level 8, and the hunter also leveled up once, reaching level 11. There were 3 more skill points, Roger didn't add them yet. In the hero class column, he saw a Firebrand Blademaster heritage that needed to be activated. Must activate. Activate Firebrand Blademaster heritage, you can obtain the hero class Firebrand Blademaster. Because you have the enhanced warrior skill Wuji Swordsmanship, the Firebrand Blademaster can be transformed into Wuji Blademaster. Do you want to transform? Wuji Blademaster? Master Yi? Roger's expression became strange. System, you seem to be crossing over. However, if it really is Master Yi, then it is really necessary to transform. Although it is possible to lose Windwalk and Mirror Image, getting an Alpha Strike is worth it. Stealth and Confusion skills can be learned later, and it is not impossible to learn Windwalk and Mirror Image again. Alpha Strike, this kind of skill that crosses over from the game, is something that can't be found. The system gave 2 development directions for the Blademaster. The Firebrand Blademaster tends to use fire elements to enhance attack power. However, the ability to use fire elements is not very strong, limited to covering the weapon. The Wuji Blademaster tends to the ultimate application of swordsmanship, stronger power, faster speed, and more subtle skills. The disadvantage is that it cannot use elements, and the attack attribute is limited to physical attacks. Comparing the two, Roger did not hesitate to choose Wuji Blademaster. There are ways to increase magic attack, find a powerful magic weapon or change to a mage in the future can solve it. If it doesn't work, enchant the weapon. The ultimate application of swordsmanship made Roger's heart beat faster, the power is comparable to a Tauren, the speed is comparable to an elf, and with high swordsmanship, a surprise attack can also complete the feat of Hellscream killing Manoroth. Chapter 14. Acquired Hero Class, Wujua Bladesman. Due to the Hero Class, the Warrior Class has been overwritten. Level transferred to the Hero Class, Skills enhanced. Current skills available to learn, Windwalk. Learned Windwalk, Windwalk upgraded to Adept level. Hero Class, Wujua Bladesman. Skills, Wujua Style, Hero, Adept. Parry, Hero, Adept. Charge, Hero, Novice. Windwalk, Hero, Adept. Roger took out a healing salve and applied it to his fingers. His fingers were injured, and he probably wouldn't be able to draw a bow for a while. However, with Windwalk, his combat ability not only didn't decrease, but greatly improved. Jumping down from the tree, Roger felt his body, which was much stronger than before. If he were to fight that Bladewind swordsman again, he wouldn't need to rely on tricks. Roger rummaged through his bag and found an amulet with a flame pattern, placing it on the notch of the blade of flames. Whoosh! The blade of flames immediately burst into flames, instantly making Roger feel the heat. Roger quickly removed the blade wind rune. The flames didn't distinguish between friend and foe, so what was the point? If he had just changed to the blade wind swordsman class, would he be immune to the burning flames? Soon, Roger put this idea behind him. Even if he knew this, he wouldn't sacrifice his long-term future for a temporary increase in strength. Thinking too much was useless. Roger picked up the blade of flames and ran towards the east. He still had to find John, wondering if he had caused any trouble. Throughout the forest, battlefields were everywhere. The fleeing orcs continued to resist the humans' attacks. Although they were poisoned and their combat power had declined, knowing that escape was hopeless, they fought fiercely, and many humans had died from their desperate counterattacks. Therefore, the human soldiers were very cautious, even just surrounding the orcs. Anyway, these orcs would soon die from the poison, and they didn't need to fight desperately. The orcs obviously knew why the human soldiers weren't attacking. Not wanting to die so pathetically, they launched attacks with all their might. Just then, a figure suddenly appeared behind the orcs, wielding an unusually large two-handed sword, beheading the orcs. Roger. Some soldiers recognized Roger, the Stormwind City champion, and looked at him in surprise. They had never heard that Roger could turn invisible. Roger didn't explain, "Did you see Lieutenant Todman?" "Lieutenant Todman is in the front." "Thanks." Roger waved to the soldiers and strode forward. Along the way, he encountered many orcs fighting to the death. Roger used Windwalk to kill them all. How could Roger miss this opportunity to gain experience? By the time he found Todman, the Wujua bladesman had leveled up again. "Little Rogers." Todman looked at Roger in surprise. "How did you come from the rear?" "It's a long story." Roger said, "I went through a big detour to find you." "Uncle Todman, where's John?" "John is chasing and killing orcs in the front." "I'll go find him." Roger didn't say anything more and continued forward. The density of orcs here was already quite high. If he wasn't careful, he might be ambushed by orcs. With John's careless personality, he was likely to suffer. Murphy's Law proved true. Roger had only walked 3 miles when he saw John running towards him in a panic. Behind him, there were dozens of orcs chasing him. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Watching John constantly pat his mouth, Roger couldn't help but have black lines appear on his forehead. This guy was really carefree, even having the mind to fool around while running away. Just then, many human soldiers suddenly appeared around them, frantically shooting arrows and unleashing magic at the orcs. Roger raised an eyebrow. When did this kid have such tactics? But he still hadn't changed his death-seeking personality. The orcs were caught off guard, and they were immediately thrown into chaos. Not knowing what John had done to the orcs, these orcs still didn't want to let him go after being attacked. 2 orcs desperately threw the battle axes in their hands. John turned his head to show off, preparing to watch the demise of these orcs. But the battle axes flying towards him scared him out of his wits. Just then, a figure suddenly appeared beside him, raising a long knife to knock away the battle axes. John was startled. Taking a closer look, he immediately exclaimed in surprise, "Roger, how did you get here?" Roger glared at him fiercely, "I'll deal with you later." After saying that, he activated charge and rushed towards the orcs. Dodging an arrow, the blade of flames pierced into an orc's stomach. The other orcs saw a human rushing over and immediately attacked him. Roger flashed, suddenly disappearing in front of the orcs, and reappearing in the middle of the orcs. The blade of flames swung, taking the lives of several orcs. The surrounding human soldiers were stunned. They didn't expect Roger to be able to fight so many orcs alone with ease. John opened his mouth even wider. Roger's changes were so great that he couldn't recognize him. If he hadn't just seen Roger's face, he wouldn't have believed that the person slaughtering the orcs was Roger. The orcs were also shocked and angry. They were shocked by Roger's strength and angry at Roger's slaughter of the orcs. Roar! The orcs roared one after another, rushing towards Roger regardless of everything. If they didn't kill Roger now, Roger would kill countless orcs in the future. Roger was expressionless, suddenly disappearing in front of the orcs. Windwalk? The orcs were stunned and began to look around for Roger's. A blade appeared in front of an orc, killing him, and Roger appeared immediately. The orcs next to him immediately attacked Roger. Roger quickly dodged and counterattacked, killing them. The other orcs looked at each other, obviously knowing that they couldn't kill Roger this way. So they took a gamble and threw the battle axes in their hands at Roger. Roger raised his knife to block, and the orcs immediately rushed over, wanting to knock him down. But Roger flashed under his feet, quickly breaking away from the orc's pounce, rushing to another orc, slashing with his long knife, killing him. Roger appeared and disappeared for a while, ghosting all the orcs down. "Roger, you..." Before John could ask, he saw Roger turn around, glaring at him with dissatisfaction. John immediately laughed sheepishly. "Roger, aren't I doing well?" Roger said angrily, "Now that our parents' whereabouts are unknown, if you die again, I will really have no relatives." Hearing this, John immediately lowered his head, his expression downcast. Roger sighed and walked over to hug his head. He knew that his stupid brother was eager for revenge, so he would be so adventurous. But, he might really only have this one relative, and he must not let anything happen to him. Chapter 15. Orcs suffer a crushing defeat. Their losses in the forest were significant, but after leaving the forest, their losses were even greater. With the Burning Blade clan leading the way, Blackhand finally reached Westfall Keep. However, Westfall Keep had already been occupied by Lothar. The knights charged along the road, instantly crushing the Orcish lines. Having fled desperately for the better part of a day, the orcs were exhausted. Facing the spirited cavalry at this time, they had no power to resist. Blackhand's Blackrock clan bore the brunt of the attack, collapsing after a single charge. The Wolf Riders fled immediately, leaving the infantry to face the slaughter of the human cavalry. Blackhand himself also fled in a sorry state, only managing to escape under the cover of the Burning Blade blademasters. The orcs who followed out of the forest also encountered the cavalry's charge. Coupled with the attack from King Lane's army from behind, a large portion of the orcs died in battle, with only a small number managing to escape. According to incomplete statistics, over 5,000 orcs died in this battle. Roger's gains were also significant. Killing a large number of orcs allowed his Blade Master to level up to level 11, gaining 3 skill points. Orc Slayer, Hero title. When fighting orcs, there is a high probability of perceiving the orcs' weaknesses. At the same time, there is a certain probability of causing fear or anger in orcs. 3 more achievement points arrived. Roger immediately turned his gaze to the skill bar, wondering which skill to strengthen. "Hey! Windwalk seems to be able to be strengthened." Just as he was about to strengthen it, Todman's shout suddenly came. "Rogers, come with me to meet the king." Roger was helpless and could only stop strengthening his skills for now. He ran to Todman's side. "Lieutenant, what's the matter?" Todman raised an eyebrow. He didn't know why Roger seemed dissatisfied, but he still said, "I'm not sure, but Sir Lothar is also there. I guess it might be related to reclaiming the lost territories." Hearing this, the dissatisfaction in Roger's heart immediately dissipated. If he weren't in the army, he would have rushed back to Lakeshire to find his family right now. Soon, the two arrived at Goldshire and met King Lane and Lothar. King Lane was very happy to see Roger. "Welcome, our great hero." Roger was a little surprised, not understanding what King Lane meant. Lothar said with a smile, "Your feat of killing dozens of orcs alone has spread throughout the army." Roger said indifferently, "They were just a few dozen weakened orcs who were poisoned. There's nothing to praise." King Lane looked at Lothar with a strange expression. Lothar was also very surprised. Neither of them expected Roger to be so unmoved. This obviously did not meet their expectations. Lothar coughed lightly and said with a smile, "Regardless of whether those orcs were poisoned or not, you were the one who killed them, weren't you? You must know that ordinary soldiers are no match for even a poisoned orc. You are a well-deserved hero." King Lane took over the conversation. "That's right. Although you are humble, it does not negate your bravery. I have decided to grant you Roger's Karazhan knighthood. Achievement earned, Stormwind Knight, obtained the Stormwind Knight title, 2 achievement points. Stormwind Hero, elite title, a knight of the Kingdom of Stormwind, deeply loved by the Kingdom of Stormwind. You will have a chance to get discounts when shopping in Stormwind City, and you can purchase military supplies from the Stormwind City Quartermaster." 2 more achievement points arrived. Before Roger could show a happy expression, Lothar said, "Roger's Karazhan, in view of your performance in the war, I now grant you the rank of sergeant and appoint you as the commander of B Company." B Company. Roger seemed to have opened up some memory, and he subconsciously looked at Todman beside him. Todman gave him a forced smile. "You deserve it." The soldier under him had risen 3 ranks and was now on equal footing with him. His mood was still very complicated. especially since this soldier was only 20 years old, unbelievably young. King Lane smiled and said, Lieutenant Todman, in view of your performance on the battlefield and the success of the new army, you are now promoted to captain and appointed as the commander of the newly formed 11th Legion. Todman couldn't believe it, but when he saw Lothar nod, he immediately saluted excitedly. Willing to serve you, my majesty. King Lane nodded with satisfaction. Lothar then said, Captain Todman, the 11th Legion will fully adopt the construction methods of a company, so in the following time, you need to devote yourself wholeheartedly to the construction of the Legion. Todman assured, Sir, rest assured, I will definitely build a strong army for the kingdom. Roger was a little anxious when he heard this. Sir, aren't we going to take the opportunity to attack? Lothar understood his thoughts very well. Of course we will attack. This time we will fully recover the lost territories and push the battle line back to the Black Morass. Now, I'm giving you a mission, immediately go to Lakeshire to scout the situation there. Yes. Roger shouted excitedly, gave a forceful salute, and turned to run out. Just as he ran out, Todman chased after him from behind. Rogers. Uncle Todman. Todman led his warhorse out of the stable. Rogers, lend you this horse first, return it to me when you come back. Thank you. Roger thanked Todman, and without being polite, he jumped on his horse and headed east. Along the way, he occasionally saw knights cleaning up the battlefield. They were still hunting down orcs, lest they hide and cause security risks. After a while, Roger regained his composure. Going to Lakeshire to scout might mean encountering orcs, and he had to strengthen his combat ability as much as possible. Thinking of this, he opened the system and began to strengthen his skills. Strengthen wind walk, stealth increased by 10%, speed increased by 10%, attack increased by 10%. Strengthen charge, obtain skill dauntless charge. Dauntless charge, speed increased by 10%, attack increased by 10%. Dauntless charge? This name sounds a bit familiar. Could it be Xin Zhao? First the skills of Master Yi, then the skills of Xin Zhao. System, what are you doing? Could you be a League of Legends system? Apart from the name, Blade Mastery and Dauntless Charge have nothing to do with League of Legends. Blade Mastery is still just ordinary swordsmanship, but it is faster, more skillful, and more powerful than the swordsmanship Roger knows in this world. Dauntless Charge is not teleporting to the enemy's side to attack, there is still a charging process, but the charging speed is faster and the attack power is higher, and it still has not deviated from the scope of this world. Chapter 16. The knights pushed the battle line to the triangular intersection, saving Roger a lot of time. However, for the next journey, Roger needed to proceed on his own. He didn't take the mountain path, as the orcs might have set up an ambush nearby. He tied his horse in a hidden place and then climbed the mountain himself. The journey was rugged, but it was safe. When he reached the top of the mountain, he saw from afar that Lakeshire was shrouded in fire, with many figures busy, seemingly fighting the fire. Eagle Eye. It's humans, the people of Lakeshire. Roger happily came down from the mountain, mounted his horse, and quickly galloped towards Lakeshire. The orcs had already retreated, but before retreating, they set fire to the houses in Lakeshire to lay the foundation for their next attack. Mayor Solomon detected this situation and immediately led the hiding people out to fight the fire. Roger also helped fight the fire, working until night to extinguish the blaze. After finishing, he pulled aside a familiar person to inquire about his parents' whereabouts. Don't worry, I will definitely make the orcs pay the price. In the dawn's light, Roger stood up, then mounted his horse and embarked on the road back to Stormwind. Vengeance against the orcs was not possible with his own strength alone, and even relying on the Stormwind Kingdom's own strength was not enough. Not to mention that Orgrim Doomhammer would soon take the throne. Even now, the orcs' strength was still far greater than the Stormwind Kingdom's. It should be known that in these few attacks, the orcs only used their regular forces, and their warlocks did not participate. With Stormwind's weak magical power, it was no match for the warlocks at all. And with Stormwind's defenses, it would be difficult to resist the warlocks' fell magic. Therefore, he must unite all the forces that could be united and strengthen anyone who could help fight against the orcs. However, he had no say now, and the only thing he could influence was his bee company. He pondered how to train the new recruits as he hurried towards Stormwind. But just as he reached the vicinity of Azora's tower, he saw a team of cavalry coming towards him, led by Lothar. Sir! Lothar also saw Roger. Rogers, it's great to see you. Come and give me some advice. What happened? Roger asked in confusion. Lothar introduced him to the mage and the green-skinned woman behind him. This is Kajar, and Garona. Roger instantly understood that Lothar was going to raid Karazhan. Sure enough, Lothar explained how Kajar and Garona discovered that Medivh was acting strangely, and then said, His Majesty the King thinks we should prepare for war in Stormwind and use Stormwind's solid walls to resist the Orcish attack. But I think we should take the initiative and find out if Medivh has betrayed us. But, I'm a little hesitant, after all, Lane is the king. This is not a conflict. Roger said affirmatively, Sir, His Majesty the King has given you military autonomy, and you have the right to make any military decisions. Moreover, strategically speaking, passive defense is never advisable. Not to mention whether Stormwind can hold it, even if it can, don't the people of other territories need to be taken care of? Lakeshire, Sentinel Hill, Goldshire, and hundreds of farms and hundreds of thousands of people throughout the kingdom will face the orc's butcher knife. Therefore, sir, your decision is correct, offense is the best defense. Lothar just wanted to ask for peace of mind. After Roger's persuasion, Lothar became even more determined. Medivh was the guardian of humanity, a very powerful mage. If he betrayed, it would be an unprecedented disaster for humanity. Okay, let's continue. Roger, you come with us too, I need your strength. Roger hesitated for a moment, he really didn't want to go to Karazhan. With his current strength, he wasn't even enough for Medivh to fill the gaps between his teeth. But then he thought again, Lothar's raid on Karazhan was just a raid to kill Medivh, and the casualties were not very large. Going over at this time was like sending charcoal in the snow for Lothar, and Lothar would definitely not treat him badly in the future. Balancing the risks and rewards, Roger gritted his teeth and decided to take the plunge. Willing to serve you, sir. Lothar happily patted Roger on the shoulder, expressing his great satisfaction. With Roger, a powerhouse who could slaughter dozens of orcs, this operation would be much simpler. However, he glanced at the bandage on Roger's finger and turned to Kajar and said, The mage should have healing spells, right? Kajar shook his head, No, but we usually use alchemy to make some healing potions, does anyone need one? As he spoke, Kajar took out a red vial from his pocket. Roger took it, looked at it curiously, How do I use this? Just drink it. Thank you. Roger opened the stopper and drank the potion in one gulp. Soon, a hot feeling came from his finger. Roger opened the bandage and saw that the redness and swelling were gradually subsiding, and the pain quickly disappeared. It's really amazing. Of course. Kajar showed a smug smile, This is a masterpiece of magic. Magic? Roger thought to himself, mages are indeed the chosen ones. When he returned to Stormwind, he would definitely try to learn magic. Kajar looked at Roger curiously. This young man seemed to be even younger than him, but he could make Lothar listen to him. He must have something extraordinary about him. Soon, he noticed that Roger was not wearing the knight's standard armor, nor did he carry a lance. Instead, he was using a long sword and carrying a bow and arrow. Aren't you a knight? Roger explained, Although I have a knight's title, I am from the 11th Legion of the New Model Army. Kajar didn't quite understand. He had never heard of the 11th Legion or the New Model Army. Lothar said from the side, The 11th Legion is a mixed legion, which not only has warriors, but also many hunters and mage apprentices, cooperating in combat between multiple arms. Roger is both a warrior and a hunter, and is the most powerful member of the 11th Legion. Wow! Kajar opened his mouth and sighed, but didn't seem too surprised. In his heart, even the most powerful warrior was far inferior to a mage. Instead, Garona on the side asked in surprise, Is your long sword the flame blade? Flame blade? What flame blade? Kajar asked in confusion. Lothar and the others also looked over, obviously also very interested in the flame blade in Garona's mouth. Chapter 17. The Blade of Flames is the weapon of the blademaster. Every orc is a powerful warrior, but only warriors of the Blade of Flames clan are the most powerful in combat. Because they receive systematic training from a young age, not only training in combat skills, but also training in affinity with the fire element. When they come of age, they will become apprentices, following the powerful warriors of the clan. These powerful warriors are called blade masters because they are good at using burning longswords. Burning longsword. Lothar suddenly thought of something. So those powerful warriors are blade masters. No wonder they can easily break through the cavalry blockade. The knights turned pale when they heard this. Then, is that orc a blademaster? Roger asked, pretending to be confused. No wonder flames suddenly appeared on his sword. If it hadn't been in the river at the time, I really wouldn't have been his opponent. When the knights heard this, they couldn't help but feel jealous. What a stroke of luck! Garona took a deep look at Roger. The power of the blademaster is not all in the blade of flames. Wind walk, mirror image, and the ultimate combat skills are the foundations of their lives. Using the fire element is just the icing on the cake for the blademaster. Roger's pretense of weakness made Garona feel alert. She always felt that Roger was targeting her. The shrewd Lothar immediately sensed that something was wrong. He didn't say anything and changed the subject directly. The group entered Elwyn Forest, passed through Goldshire without stopping, and went directly into Deadwind Pass. Deadwind Pass is a rugged mountain valley with treacherous roads that are difficult for large-scale military operations and unsuitable for human habitation. Therefore, the Stormwind Kingdom's expansion of its territory stopped here and turned south to Stranglethorn Vale. They would rather compete for living space with thousands of trolls than step into Deadwind Pass, which shows how poor the conditions are here. The cold wind kept roaming in the mountains, and it took a long time for everyone to light a bonfire. But even with a bonfire, they still couldn't stop the cold wind from invading. Roger was also shivering from the cold. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Garona and Kadger leaning together, and a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. If Kadger knew that Garona was pregnant with Medivh's child, I wonder what he would think. Rogers. Lothar walked over and said softly, Garona is now loyal to the Stormwind Kingdom. She is different from other orcs. Roger turned his head. If your parents were also killed by orcs, you wouldn't say such a thing, sir. Lothar was stunned for a moment, and patted Roger on the shoulder with regret. My condolences. He didn't say anything more, but he knew that Roger would not attack Garona. If he wanted to kill Garona, he would have done it long ago. Roger is a smart man and knows that he needs Garona to go to Karazhan this time. Garona also heard Roger's words and sighed softly. But she didn't think much about it, because compared to before, this bit of hatred was nothing. Kadger looked at Garona and said softly, Don't worry, I will protect you. Garona smiled and teased, You should protect yourself first, apprentice. Watching the two flirting, the sarcasm on Roger's face grew thicker. He really didn't mean to kill Garona. Although he hated the orcs, he could still tell right from wrong. To the orcs, Garona was just a hybrid, a tool, and not worthy of being called an orc at all. Killing Garona would not make the orcs feel heartache, or even care. Roger wouldn't do meaningless things. Instead, letting Garona kill the orcs would make the orcs angry. This matter needs to be carefully planned. At night, the cold wind was too strong. Kadger took out some potions again for everyone to drink. After drinking it, their bodies warmed up, and they took turns sleeping. The next day, before dawn, everyone was frozen awake again. They cooked some food on the bonfire, and after eating, it was just dawn, so they continued on their way. Before Medivh died, there were still plants growing in Deadwind Pass, but not many. After all, the environment was harsh, and only those plants that were not very picky about the environment would grow here. Similarly, the lack of plants naturally meant a lack of herbivores, and even fewer carnivores. Roger asked curiously, How do you live in such an uninhabited place? Logically speaking, such a barren place is not enough to support the operation of a huge magic tower, even if there are not too many people in the magic tower. But with the mage's extravagant nature, even if they searched the entire place, they would not be able to decorate one floor of the magic tower. Kadger raised his eyebrows, wanting to show off, We know magic. As long as we draw a teleportation array, we can teleport supplies back to Karazhan. Do you still need to draw a magic circle to open a portal? Kadger rolled his eyes. The teleportation array is an advanced spell. Even a strong man like Medivh would draw a magic circle for safety. Otherwise, if something goes wrong, the person or item being teleported will be trapped in the space crack. He was angered by Roger. He finally had a chance to show off, but Roger's words hit him hard. Originally, Garona didn't have a good impression of Roger, but now her impression of Roger is even worse. Roger spread his hands. He really didn't mean to. After all, in the game, mages just click a skill to open a portal, and then the loading bar is finished. There is no such thing as drawing a magic circle at all. That's right, there is in the Warcraft movie. However, that cadger in the Warcraft movie seems to be more handsome than this cadger. It's not that he is wearing colored glasses. After all, actors always have to put on makeup. And this cadger, tired from the journey, dusty, has no intention to dress up. He even forgot to use cleansing. Cleansing seems to be a paladin spell, mages don't seem to know it, right? Cadger frowned when he saw Roger's strange eyes. If it weren't for Sir Lothar, I would definitely let him see the power of the mages. Some people are born incompatible. Roger and Cadger may be like this. Even if Cadger is a great hero in the future, Roger just doesn't like him. Chapter 18. From the mountaintop, one could see some houses around Karazhan. This place used to be a small town, but due to rumors of hauntings, people moved away one after another, and the town was abandoned, leaving only Medivh and his 2 servants. Later, Cadger and Garona arrived, making a total of only 5 people. Lothar looked at the abandoned town, his expression somewhat sorrowful. His mind was still recalling memories from his childhood, when he, Lane, and Medivh got along well and often gathered here. Medivh liked to drink, and the entire town's basement was his wine cellar. But now, the town was gradually abandoned, just like their friendship, which was gradually fading. We need to hide the horses so as not to alarm the puppets inside Karazhan, Cadger reminded. Lothar adjusted his emotions. I know the location of the stables, follow me. After stabling the horses, Cadger led everyone to the back door of Karazhan. Garona, who had just left the group, was waiting there. No one is guarding the back door, let's go in. Lothar nodded, told 2 knights to guard here, and then led the rest of the people into the back door. Upon entering Karazhan, Roger focused his attention and constantly used Eagle Eye to scout. No danger. Cadger said, we need to hide temporarily and wait for Garona to find Medivh. Lothar nodded, agreeing to this plan. Garona went invisible and sneaked away. Cadger led everyone to a nearby room to wait. After a while, Garona came back. Medivh is about to go to the basement. Let's go. Lothar ordered, and everyone immediately moved out, heading towards the basement under Garona's lead. Sure enough, they soon spotted Medivh's figure. Cadger whispered, Karazhan has countless magical puppets. We should wait until Medivh enters the basement before taking action. And so, the group followed Medivh towards the basement. But before long, a pair of magical puppets patrolled over, blocking the group in a dead end. Cadger said anxiously, someone must lure them away and prevent them from sounding the alarm. Otherwise, we will face countless magical puppets. I'll go. Garona stood up, they know me and won't sound the alarm. What if Medivh has modified the alarm permissions? Cadger asked. Cadger was worried, but he couldn't do anything about it. Roger then said, I'll go up and take a look. Cadger hesitated for a moment. He was worried about Roger going up, but at this time, he had no other choice but to say, thank you. Roger cast Windwalk and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Following the magical puppets, Roger followed the stairs all the way to the platform on the top floor. Garona was cornered in a dead end. She prepared to use stealth to escape, but as soon as she went invisible, the magical puppets emitted beams of light, revealing her from stealth. Garona panicked and quickly raised her hands, you can't touch me, or I'll have Medivh dismantle you. However, the magical puppets did not listen to her at all. Beams of arcane light struck her body, fixing her in place and lifting her into the air. No matter how she struggled, she couldn't break free. Garona was extremely anxious and wanted to call for help. However, the arcane light seemed to block even sound. Roger could only see her shouting, but he couldn't hear a single sound. He couldn't wait any longer. These magical puppets could even see through stealth. If they turned around, he would lose the opportunity to strike. Thinking of this, he quickly rushed towards the magical puppets, suddenly jumped up, raised the flame blade, and slashed at one of the magical puppets. Thump! The magical puppet was split in half and crashed to the ground. The other magical puppets were stunned for a moment before they reacted. However, Roger's speed was clearly faster than their reaction speed. He used Windwalk again, repeating the trick and bisecting another magical puppet. The remaining magical puppets discovered Roger and immediately glowed red, about to sound the alarm. At this moment, 2 flashes of blade light passed by, and the heads of the magical puppets were chopped off. The alarm devices on them lost their power supply, and the lights went out. However, these magical puppets were not paralyzed, because their energy cores had not been destroyed. Losing their heads made the magical puppets much slower, and in front of a legendary assassin and a blademaster, they had no power to fight back. If it weren't for their mindless release of arcane barrages, which made the two wary, they would have ended the battle long ago. Even so, the magical puppets didn't last long and soon fell under the two's attacks. Garona looked at Roger, obviously surprised that he had come to save her. "Thank you." Roger looked at Garona's twin daggers, which Gul'dan had specially ordered to be made for Garona. Although they were considered artifacts in the game, Roger estimated that they were at most epic level weapons. If you had acted earlier, they wouldn't have been able to catch you. He could have stealthily taken out the magical puppets, and Garona, a legendary assassin, could certainly have done the same. It was just that Garona didn't do so in order not to trigger the alarm. Garona remained non-committal. With her strength, she was not afraid of Roger. If she wanted to kill Roger, even a head-on confrontation would not make Roger her opponent. That's why she told Kadger to protect himself. That wasn't just flirting, it was a fact. "Let's go find them," Garona suggested. "Okay." Roger nodded, and was about to go down, but he inadvertently saw a huge skeleton on the platform behind him. The skeleton belonged to a giant creature, but it had been burned by powerful flames, leaving only a charred bone frame. Garona explained, "This skeleton belongs to a blue dragon." Medivh said that the blue dragon attacked him and was burned to death by his magic. Roger's heart stirred. A blue dragon, was it Nightbane, the boss of the Karazhan instance? In the game, it seemed that touching its ashes could revive it, and then killing it would give you arcane essence. Something that even a great mage wanted should be a good thing, right? Thinking of this, Roger couldn't help but walk over and reach out to touch the giant skull of the skeleton. "Let's go. We don't have much time." Garona was about to urge him, but she saw a huge figure suddenly rising from the skeleton, scaring her so much that she swallowed the second half of her sentence. Chapter 19. Roar Medivh, you will fall into hell. The massive figure roared, but the sound it made was extremely weak. And with this shout, its huge body rapidly shrunk, becoming half its original size. "This is a blue dragon's soul?" Garona asked in surprise. Roger didn't speak, but looked at the part connected to the blue dragon's soul, a bone between the upper and lower jaws. He curiously took it off and gently wiped it. It was as crystal clear as a sapphire. "Damn mortal, put down your filthy hand." The blue dragon's soul pounced towards Roger, but unfortunately, it passed right through his body, causing him no harm whatsoever. On the contrary, this action caused its body to shrink even more. "Damn it, this place has imprisoned everything, including my soul," Roger said playfully. "In that case, if I take this gem away, will you be freed?" "Freed?" The blue dragon sneered. "Mortal, you're too naive. Everything in Karazhan is controlled by Medivh. As long as he's not dead, as long as my remains are still here, I will never be freed." "What if Medivh dies?" Roger asked. "Medivh dies? Ha ha ha, how is that possible? Even I, a noble blue dragon, am no match for Medivh. Do you know how powerful he is? He is a demon." Garona said unconvinced, "We will definitely kill Medivh." "You greenskin, weren't you summoned here by Medivh? Why do you want to kill him too?" The blue dragon was puzzled. "Some are born noble, and some are born lowly, but that doesn't represent their character. Although I have orc blood in me, they treat me like a slave, while humans treat me kindly. Why should I work for the orcs and not help my friends?" Garona spoke her mind, seemingly telling the blue dragon, but actually saying it for Roger to hear. Roger said softly, "I hope you remember what you said today." "Of course." Garona gave her promise. The blue dragon sneered, "A bunch of foolish mortals." Roger interrupted him, "All right. We are foolish mortals. Then, Your Excellency, the great blue dragon, how were you killed by Medivh? Did he ambush you?" The blue dragon was exasperated, "Shut up. You damn mortal." Roger sneered, he naturally knew that he had touched the blue dragon's scar. Medivh didn't need to ambush it to defeat it, a simple head-on confrontation, a single spell, turned this clamoring blue dragon to ashes. If it weren't for the blue dragon's strong body and the many calcified parts, it probably wouldn't even have any bones left. Garona looked at Roger in confusion, wondering if provoking it like that was a good idea. Of course, it was good, otherwise, how would it recognize reality? Roger said coldly, "Blue Dragon, you are already dead. If you don't want your soul to die as well, then cooperate obediently, otherwise, I will send your soul to Medivh." "No. You can't do that." The Blue Dragon cried out in despair. "Your name?" "Arcanus." "Very good." Roger nodded in satisfaction, then asked, "This gem can preserve your soul, right?" "Of course." Arcanus said, "This is where my last magical essence is located, containing vast magical energy and many amazing functions. Of course, the main function is to serve as a container for my soul." Roger opened the system and appraised the gem. Arcanus's magical essence contains powerful arcane energy. Long-term wear can improve one's arcane affinity, making it easier for the user to control arcane energy. Note, it is currently Arcanus's soul container. Before Arcanus's soul leaves, using it will incur the hatred of the Blue Dragon clan. Roger raised an eyebrow. He had originally thought of using Arcanus as a portable grandpa. Now it seems that he should quickly get Arcanus's soul out of there. Otherwise, if he's targeted by the Blue Dragon lunatics, he probably won't have the life to use this gem. Thinking of this, Roger said to Arcanus, "I will take it out of Karazhan, and after Medivh dies, you will be freed." "You guys really want to kill Medivh?" Arcanus asked in disbelief. "Of course." Roger didn't explain much. He couldn't explain it either. However, getting just a gem is a bit of a small reward. He looked at Arcanus. "All right, now let's talk about the reward." "What reward?" Not only was Arcanus stunned, but even Garona was stunned. Roger didn't care about their opinions. "I've helped you collect your corpse no matter how you look at it, shouldn't you give me some reward? Moreover, I'm going to face the most powerful mage in this world next. Without something decent, how can we possibly defeat him?" Garona was speechless. Arcanus was exasperated. "Greedy mortal. I don't deny that I'm greedy, but it's too stingy if someone helps you and you don't give back, right?" Arcanus was speechless. He actually felt that Roger's words made sense. "Damn it, how could I have such thoughts?" In any case, Arcanus compromised. "Mortal, go to those magic puppets." Roger was puzzled, but he still obediently walked over. Arcanus suddenly roared, and a large amount of arcane energy burst out from the sapphire, extending into the bodies of those magic puppets. Then, countless metals were extracted from them, gathering in front of Roger like water, and finally turning into a round shield. "Mortal, this is your reward. If you don't free my soul, I will curse you forever." Arcanus finished weakly, and finally burrowed into the sapphire. With Arcanus's slumber, the shield fell to the ground. Roger put the gem in his pocket and picked up the shield. Arcane Construct Shield, fine grade, has a strong magic defense effect. Roger was a little disappointed that it wasn't epic grade. But thinking about it, Arcanus wasn't a very famous blue dragon, and he died when he was making the shield. Being able to make a fine grade shield was already very good. Moreover, this shield fully considered Roger's upcoming battle against Medivh. Once Roger becomes Medivh's attack target, this shield can save his life. It's already good, what more could you want? Chapter 20. In the Karazhan dungeon, the knights lay on the ground, long since deceased. Only Lothar and Kadger remained, constantly dodging Medivh's attacks in the pursuit of the magical constructs. If Medivh's soul hadn't suddenly awakened, Lothar and Kadger would have perished long ago. Even so, the two were still fleeing in a sorry state. "Kadger, I have forgiven you once, but you did not cherish it. Now, you will not have another chance." Medivh ruthlessly cast a spell at Kadger, hitting him directly. It was a curse, and Kadger's face rapidly aged, as if he had suddenly entered old age. After being struck, Kadger was dazed, and his vision blurred, a scene appearing before his eyes. Lothar was frantic, but no matter how he pushed Kadger, he didn't respond. Seeing the magical construct approaching, about to hammer them both to death, Lothar had no choice but to raise his shield and meet the magical construct's fist. However, he waited for a long time without any attack coming. When he lowered his shield, he was surprised to find a person on top of the magical construct. "Rogers!" Lothar shouted in surprise. "Sir!" Rogers greeted Lothar and was about to pull out the long sword from the magical construct's body. He had seen Lothar in danger and quickly used Gale Step to jump up, inserting the sword into what he believed to be the energy source, based on his knowledge of magical constructs. Sure enough, the magical construct stopped. Now was not the time for reminiscing. Rogers used his feet to brace against the magical construct, trying to pull out the flame blade. But at this moment, the magical construct suddenly moved. Just like the destroyer in Thor 1, its body completely rotated, and it embraced him. Rogers quickly let go and jumped off the magical construct. The magical construct opened its hands, and a barrage of arcane missiles shot out, scaring Rogers into using Gale Step to escape. The magical construct wanted to continue attacking, but then a figure appeared on its neck, and 2 daggers severed its head. Garona jumped down, grabbed the hilt of the flame blade, and used her body's strength to pull downwards, directly cutting a huge gash in the magical construct's body. The magical construct staggered and fell to the ground, no longer moving. Throwing the flame blade to Rogers, "We're even." Rogers looked at her with a complicated expression. If it weren't for the tricks of fate, this woman would have been a great teammate. Garona. Medivh gave an ambiguous smile, "Even you have come to oppose me." Medivh raised his hand and cast a spell at Garona. Garona quickly dodged, went around a pillar, and entered stealth. Then she quickly approached Medivh, wanting to assassinate him. But unfortunately, Medivh seemed to have sensed her presence. A wave of arcane energy surged outwards, and Garona was blown away by the tyrannical magical energy, falling back into the corridor. Garona clutched her stomach, confirming that the fetus inside was unharmed, and then breathed a sigh of relief. She was about to stand up when she suddenly realized that the scenery around her had changed, changing to a familiar yet unfamiliar place. She was stunned. Lothar saw that Garona, like Kadger, seemed to be under a petrification spell, and couldn't help but become anxious. "Medivh, your opponent is me." Medivh looked at Lothar with a sneer, raised his hand at him, and was about to cast a spell. But at this moment, he stopped, the green light in his eyes turning into purple, and then back to green, constantly changing. Rogers saw this as a good opportunity. He immediately used Gale Step and slashed at Medivh. If he could kill Medivh in one fell swoop, he would at least get a mage profession. The great temptation made Rogers forget Medivh's terror, but in the next second, he remembered. "Foolish mortal!" Medivh sneered and waved his hand, a powerful arcane energy striking Rogers, sending him crashing into a pillar. Pfft! Rogers spat out a mouthful of blood, his vision blurred, and his sight began to distort. Rogers felt uneasy. Could it be Medivh's illusion? He couldn't fall for Medivh's trick. Thinking of this, he quickly raised the arcane construct shield and charged towards Medivh's location in his memory. Suddenly, he felt a sense of danger and immediately blocked the arcane construct shield in front of him. A huge fell flame struck the shield, rapidly corroding the arcane energy on the shield, and also corroding the illusion that was about to appear. Crack! The arcane construct shield couldn't withstand the erosion of the fell flame and actually shattered a piece. Rogers' expression changed drastically, and he wanted to dodge. Just then, Lothar rushed to Medivh and pierced Medivh's body with his sword. The fell flame immediately stopped, Medivh's entire body was shrouded in shadow, and he casually waved, knocking Lothar away. He roared in fury, "You don't want him to die, but I insist on killing him." Kadger calmed his breathing. The spell he had just cast had left him somewhat mana depleted. He was about to answer Lothar's doubts when he saw the fell flame burning over, and he quickly pulled Lothar behind a pillar. The fell flame sprayed past both sides of the pillar, constantly corroding the stone wall in front of them. This made both of them's faces change drastically. The stone pillars and stone walls behind them were made of the same material, and if the fell flame could corrode the stone wall, it could naturally corrode the stone pillars. "You just watch him die in your hands." "Ha ha ha." Medivh said something inexplicable. Garona, who had just woken up, was also very anxious. She wanted to rush over to save them, but having witnessed the power of the fell flame, she knew she had no chance unless she killed Medivh. Thinking of this, she resolutely charged towards Medivh. But before she could launch an attack, Medivh glanced at her, causing her to freeze again. Rogers narrowed his eyes. This was a good opportunity. To ensure nothing went wrong, he took out the Arcanegoth's magical essence and pressed it into the groove of the flame blade. The flame blade suddenly emitted a huge arcane energy, wrapping the entire blade. He suddenly activated Gale Step and quickly rushed towards Medivh. Medivh sensed something and turned to look at Rogers, wanting to deal with Rogers in the same way he dealt with Garona. But what he didn't expect was that Rogers came faster than he imagined. Before he could turn his head, the flame blade, wrapped in arcane energy, severed his head. Buzz. Medivh's body trembled, and the entire Karazhan trembled with it. Rogers was shocked and shouted at Garona, "Get out of the way!" Then he quickly rushed behind a pillar. Boom! The earth trembled violently, the stone pillars collapsed, the stone walls crumbled, and the ceiling of the basement fell, burying the four of them inside. Outside Karazhan, a huge shockwave erupted, the plants in Deadwind Pass instantly uprooted, the stones were shattered into fragments, and haze spread to the surrounding sky, obscuring the earth. Far away in the black morass, Gul'dan also fainted to the ground with a scream. Chapter 21. Roger stood in a violet-colored space, where besides the flowing purple energy, there was nothing else. Such monotony didn't make Roger feel anxious, instead, he felt a strange sense of warmth. Until a voice, both illusory and real, sounded, "Child, it's time for you to return." Roger opened his eyes, still buried in the ruins. He moved his body slightly and found that apart from some pain, there was nothing seriously wrong. He quickly opened the system to check, and it turned out he had only suffered minor injuries. He really was lucky. Banished the soul of Sargeras, the destroyer of worlds, gained the talent Will of Azeroth, gained the title Demon Bane, gained 10 achievement points. Will of Azeroth, Azeroth will forever watch over you. From now on, you will be Azeroth's representative, and all creatures of Azeroth will feel a kinship with you. Demon Bane, legendary title. Demons below the legendary level will feel fear upon seeing you, and their combat power will be greatly reduced. Roger was so happy that he jumped up, only to hit his head on a stone slab. Ouch! He punched the stone slab, but the smile remained on Roger's face. This was a windfall. Whether it was the Will of Azeroth or Demon Bane, both were rare and valuable. The level of the Wuji swordsman soared again, reaching level 15. He used 4 skill points to raise Wuji swordsmanship to the master level, and with the remaining skill point, he learned the warrior's common skill, Leap Strike. He hadn't learned it before due to a lack of protection, but now he had to make up for it. Back then, no, later, Hellscream used it to kill Manoroth, and although a fatal blow was added, it was also a prerequisite skill and accounted for the main contribution. Then, he immediately used 3 achievement points to enhance it, upgrading it to Guillotine. Guillotine, jump towards the enemy and chop off their head. Jumping speed increased by 10%, strength increased by 10%, lethality increased by 10%. Roger raised his eyebrows. System, you're really learning bad things. Now he already had a bit of the demeanor of a legendary warrior, both in terms of combat power and handsomeness. As long as he learned Fatal Strike, Roger really wanted to find a pit lord to test its power. Do you think my sword is not sharp enough? The remaining 7 achievement points one was given to Dauntless Charge, increasing control by 10%. In the game, a charge would cause a stun, but in reality, there was no such absolute control, the control ability was increased by 10%. 3 were used to upgrade Eagle Eye technique to telescopic vision, increasing distance by 10%, macro vision by 10%, and micro vision by 10%. The remaining 3 were kept in reserve. Exiting the system, Roger gently pushed the stone slab above his body, but it wouldn't budge. Just as Roger was about to try again, he heard Kadger chanting. A moment later, an elderly voice appeared. What just happened? Why did the basement collapse? Lothar shouted excitedly, Great, Moros, quickly get us out. Sir Lothar. The old man's voice also carried surprise. Please wait a moment, I will clear the rubble here soon. Streams of arcane energy reached under the stones, slowly trapping and lifting them. The people buried below stood up unharmed, asking each other, Are you all right? Everyone shook their heads, seemingly having suffered no major injuries. Lothar breathed a sigh of relief, raised his head to thank the old man. Thank you, Moros, if it weren't for you, we would have died here. Although he had no expression, everyone could still hear the loneliness in his voice. Kadger looked at Lothar apologetically. Once, Medivh went mad and accidentally killed him. Lothar sighed, I'm sorry, Moros, we shouldn't have let you suffer such a fate. Moros put the stones aside and cast Levitate on everyone, rescuing them all. Only then did he say, Sir, don't be sad for me. Actually, this is also good, so I can always manage the mage tower for my master. He looked at the ruins, it seems I'll be busy for a while. With that, he turned and left. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say. After a long while, Lothar said, let's go. Killing Medivh is only the first step. Next, we need to prepare for battle. There are still many things to be busy with. Wait, sir. Roger suddenly said, if I remember correctly, Karazhan should be a fief of the Kingdom of Stormwind, right? Lothar looked at Roger in confusion and nodded, saying, that's right. When we were young, Lane granted it to Medivh. Roger said, now that Medivh is dead, shouldn't the kingdom reclaim this fief? Then send mages to take over the place. You know, a mage tower is a huge fortune, even if it's used as military expenditure, it's enough for us to fight the orcs. Hearing this, Lothar couldn't help but feel a stirring in his heart. Roger was never one to meddle in other people's business, so there must be something else he was implying. Thinking of this, he turned to look at Kadger and indeed found that Kadger was secretly anxious. There must be something he didn't know about. Thinking of this, Lothar nodded and said, after returning, I will explain it to His Majesty the King. Roger said nothing more and walked towards the back door first. Kadger walked at the end, his face uncertain. At this moment, he hated Roger to the core. If it weren't for Roger's words just now, he could have taken Karazhan for himself. You know, Medivh only had one apprentice, and it was a matter of course for an apprentice to inherit the teacher's mage tower. But if the Kingdom of Stormwind reclaimed Karazhan, then the mage tower would also belong to the Kingdom of Stormwind and have nothing to do with him. He didn't care about the mage tower, what he really cared about was the knowledge inside and the powerful weapons preserved there. According to Dalaran's intelligence, there were no fewer than 10 artifacts in Karazhan, the most famous of which was the Staff of the Guardians, Medivh. Kadger was an ambitious person, otherwise, he wouldn't have accepted the Violet Eye's assignment to come here as a spy. Seeing that the spy mission was overfulfilled, the fruits of victory were being taken away from under his nose. Even if Kadger had good self-restraint, he would still have the heart to kill Roger. However, he didn't have the courage to kill anyone. The powerful strength displayed by Roger made him feel apprehensive. It seems he can only send the message back to Dalaran and then find a way. On the way back, Kadger secretly sent a message to Dalaran at night. Before everyone could return to Stormwind City, Dalaran's envoy had already arrived in Stormwind City, hoping to obtain all rights to Karazhan from King Lane first. Chapter 22. King Lane was an excellent politician and was not deceived by Dalaran. Moreover, he had a once powerful mage as an advisor, Egwin, who was now in Stormwind. Egwin had the most say regarding the wealth of Karazhan. After Lothar returned to Stormwind, King Lane learned everything about Karazhan from him and immediately made a judgment. The negotiations at the top had nothing to do with Roger. He now only wanted to return to the barracks, take over his B company, and train the recruits under him into talents. Roger, you're back in Lakeshire. As soon as he entered the B company's barracks, John quickly greeted him, inquiring about the news of old Kishon and his wife. Roger twitched his lips, but he couldn't bring himself to tell the bad news about old Kishon and his wife. John got the answer from his expression and collapsed on the ground, crying uncontrollably. Roger wanted to comfort him, but he didn't know what to say. Several veterans walked over, silently watching the two brothers. The recruits around them were at a loss, obviously not knowing why John was so sad. John cried until he was tired, and returned to the barracks under the persuasion of several veterans. Roger came to his office and began to formulate a training plan for the recruits. Based on the training he received during his time in A Company, plus some of his summaries during this period, he mainly determined several types of soldiers. First, scouts must learn stealth, eagle eye, and also have tactical analysis capabilities, so they can know the number of enemies, their combat effectiveness, and any defensive loopholes in the shortest possible time. Secondly, camouflage ability. In field operations, camouflage ability can give the troops an advantage. Therefore, the entire unit needs to learn camouflage skills. Thirdly, a strong attack ability. Roger planned to customize a batch of military crossbows to enhance the soldier's ability to kill with one strike. Or let the mages learn spells that can kill with one strike, such as a combination magic of presence of mind and fireball. Then there is mobility. Of the 36 strategies, running away is the best. If an operation fails, or is ambushed or surrounded by the enemy, they must evacuate the battlefield as quickly as possible. At this time, it depends on who is faster, who can survive. Therefore, it is best to equip horses and learn acceleration skills as much as possible. In addition to these, it is best to have stable logistics. It is best to equip each person with a magic bag, filled with a bag of military supplies, so that they don't need to return to the city for supplies for a month. After sorting it out, Roger found that this training plan required instructors, assassins, mages, priests, horsemanship, etc. For the current Stormwind, B Company's training plan is a bit extravagant, but it is not impossible to do. Roger gave the training plan to Todman, who was also taken aback. He really wanted to refuse Roger, but Roger had just made a great contribution again. Helpless, he had to take Roger to Lothar. Lothar was also taken aback when he saw the plan, but he readily agreed to it. According to Roger's plan, every soldier in B Company would become a strong person with multi-professional skills, and he really wanted to see if such soldiers could be trained. Fortunately, the kingdom obtained a large number of magic items from Karazhan, otherwise it would really be impossible to supply your training. Roger raised his eyebrows. Has the matter of Karazhan come to an end? Lothar nodded. Lane has reached an agreement with Dalaran to divide the magic items in Karazhan equally and share all the knowledge inside. Karazhan still belongs to the Kingdom of Stormwind and is temporarily managed by Medivh. As a reward, Kadger has become the next guardian. Todman was confused. He only understood the name Karazhan. Roger remained non-committal. Although Lothar said a lot, he didn't say anything about the specific agreement. How is the magic items in Karazhan divided equally? Kadger has become the next guardian, will he inherit Adish as well? There are also various artifacts in Karazhan, as well as a large number of experimental products imprisoned inside, all of which are problems of ownership. However, these were beyond Roger's control, and he only needed to fight for some benefits for himself. Sir, can you provide B Company with some magic bags and magic equipment? The mages of B Company are all apprentices, and it is too difficult to kill orcs with their magic alone. I will ask His Majesty the King. Lothar's lack of refusal meant there was hope. Roger was satisfied with this, and he immediately went back to train the army. No matter what, it was definitely right to make the soldiers have strong physiques. Preliminary physical training was essential. After physical training, Roger would train their marksmanship. The soldiers were miserable, and many wanted to desert. Roger didn't stop them. He wanted to train special forces in this world, and he didn't need people without perseverance at all. Roger sent away a batch and asked Todman for another batch. This was repeated, but still not many people were left. Soon, the number of people in B Company was only more than 30. In addition to the previous veterans, there were less than 10 new recruits left. Roger was not discouraged by this situation at all. To be honest, Roger was still very surprised that so many people could be left. He saw an indomitable tenacity in these people. Perhaps the soul of indomitability was not his own talent, but the racial talent of humans. Among them, the most ruthless in training was John. The death of his parents made him suffer a lot, and his hatred for the orcs became a powerful motivation. No matter what skills he learned, he was always the first to learn and be able to apply them proficiently. Even the extremely complex Wuji swordsmanship, John also mastered very quickly. Others had not yet grasped the knack, and he was already proficient. The veterans also had a spirit of not admitting defeat. John's involution made them feel ashamed and they were also practicing desperately. In 1 month, Todman's recruits had just taken shape, and B Company had already formed combat effectiveness. In every simulated battle in the Legion, B Company could always win more with less, defeating other companies even when the mages didn't use magic. Sometimes, B Company didn't even have casualties. Todman was also surprised by this. Although he knew that countless manpower and resources had been invested in B Company, he still did not expect B Company to take shape so quickly. In order to know the combat effectiveness of B Company, Lothar specially arranged for a company of knights to simulate confrontation with B Company. As a result, the knights were just launching a charge, and were thrown off their feet by the mages of B Company, becoming lambs to the slaughter. Lothar specially ordered the mages not to use magic, but it still did not change the fate of the knights. Everyone in B Company had the ability to quickly make simple traps. When the knights charged, they secretly laid a large area of horse traps, losing more than a dozen war horses, and the charge was interrupted again. B Company won both times, which made Lothar overjoyed. He was preparing to let Roger recruit more soldiers to give the orcs a surprise. However, Garona brought important news that made Lothar change his mind. Chapter 23. The orcs are attacking Stormwind again. This news stunned everyone. Neither King Lane nor Lothar had imagined the orcs would still have the strength to attack. Only Roger knew that Orgrim had taken over. According to the chronicles, Orgrim should have taken over a month ago and breached Stormwind before Lothar returned. Roger felt it was all too hasty. Orgrim, a strategist, easily believed Gul'dan's coma, killed Black Hand, took over the Shadow Council, and then led his army to break through Stormwind. The battle with Black Hand lasted several hours, plus dealing with the Shadow Council and attacking Stormwind. This was even faster than Lothar's journey to Karazhan to complete his plot kill. Could it be that the Stormwind army didn't resist at all? Couldn't tens of thousands of troops even hold out until Lothar returned? Even with Garona assassinating Lane, this was still the point that puzzled Roger the most. Garona had gone to Karazhan with Lothar, so how could she have returned early and been captured by the orcs? Did Garona flee without a fight? Or perhaps the events unfolding in reality were more logical. Orgrim needed time to confirm whether Gul'dan's coma was real or fake. After confirming Gul'dan's coma, he needed to ensure he could win before challenging Black Hand. And this required some time. After all, Orgrim's nickname was Backstabber, and preparing a backstab also needed some time. Because Black Hand's 2 failures had caused heavy losses to the orcs, Orgrim had to spend a lot of time preparing for the expedition. Not to mention other military supplies, but food alone needed some preparation, right? The orcs didn't have mages, they couldn't conjure food. Food could only be obtained through hunting and looting. However, the animals around the orcs had long been slaughtered, either entering the orcs' bellies or being converted into fell energy to power the dark portal. And the human towns and manors providing cover had also been looted by the orcs, leaving no extra food. The orcs could only speed up their march and then hunt in Elwyn Forest to collect food. Therefore, the orcs had delayed for a month before starting to attack Stormwind. At this time, Lothar, staying in Stormwind, would definitely be able to resist the orcs' attack. Then the only loophole now was King Lane's death. Having figured out all the key points, Roger immediately got up to see Lothar. However, before he could find Lothar, a sudden commotion came from the palace, faintly accompanied by shouts of "Catch the assassin!" Roger was immediately shocked and hurried towards the palace. The guards in the palace were already in chaos. Roger quickly grabbed a guard and asked, "What assassin are you catching?" "The assassin who assassinated the king. It's Garona." As expected. Roger understood in his heart, how is the king now? Not sure. This guard was obviously not guarding Lane's side and only knew that the assassin was Garona, he didn't know any other details. Helpless, Roger could only investigate himself. "Wait, you can't go in." The guard was about to stop him, but in the blink of an eye, he lost sight of Roger. Roger used Windwalk and went straight to the place where King Lane was. He quickly found the location of King Lane. The king was lying on the ground, with a bloody hole in his chest. His heart had been dug out by Garona. Prince Varian was cowering aside, afraid to approach his father's unsightly corpse. Roger revealed himself. The guards immediately became alert when they saw him. "How long has Garona been gone?" The guards recognized Roger. Although they weren't very fond of Roger's title of combat hero, Roger was still a knight personally appointed by King Lane, no matter what. Although there were many knights in Stormwind, Roger still belonged to the noble class. "It should be 3 minutes. Should be." Roger found it amusing. Was this the ability of the royal guards? No wonder King Lane was assassinated. The guards felt annoyed. Was Roger looking down on them? "Tell everyone to stop searching." With Garona's ability, she would have run out of Stormwind in 3 minutes. Roger said unceremoniously, "Now, immediately send someone to notify Sir Lothar, tell him to hand over his work to his deputy, and come over immediately." "You have no right to order us," the guards said coldly. Roger said disdainfully, "Instead of wasting time arguing about rights with me here, you might as well think about how you protected the king. If I were Sir Lothar, I would kill you all first. If you don't want to die, do as I say. Find something to cover the king with. Are you just going to let the king lie here exposed?" The guards broke out in a cold sweat. They were only thinking about catching the assassin just now and hadn't thought about covering King Lane's body. While the guards were busy, Roger walked to Prince Varian's side, looked at his trembling body, and softly comforted him, "Don't be afraid, we will protect you. Sir Lothar will be here soon." Hearing Lothar's name, the light returned to Varian's eyes. He trembled and said, "I saw it." Roger was silent. It was such a cruel thing to let a child see his father being killed. However, he couldn't let Varian continue like this because he still had a mission to shoulder. Although this was cruel to Varian, he had to do it. Your Highness, you must pull yourself together. Now the entire kingdom is in danger. You are the sole heir of the Rin family. You must pull yourself together, even if you pretend to pull yourself together. Varian raised his head and looked at him in confusion. Roger said, the assassin was sent by the orcs, and the orcs are about to attack Stormwind. The orcs hope that you will be devastated by the assassination of His Majesty the King, so they can easily take Stormwind. Your Highness, they killed your father, can you let them have their way? No. I can't. Varian's body was still trembling, but his mind had cleared up. That's right, we can't let the orcs succeed. Therefore, Your Highness, you must stand up straight, tell Sir Lothar, tell all the nobles, tell the soldiers and civilians of Stormwind, tell those orcs outside the city, nothing can defeat you. You will inherit your father's unfinished business, complete it, and do it even better. Varian nodded vigorously, repeating Roger's words, I will. I will inherit my father's unfinished business and complete it even better. Roger held out his hand, come on, Your Highness, take courage. I will stand with you and face everyone. Varian put his hand in his, and a strange light shone in his eyes. It was just like looking at his father. Chapter 24. Varian. Lothar arrived quickly. He didn't believe it when he heard that Garona had killed Lane, because through his interactions with her, Garona didn't seem like the fickle type. However, upon entering the palace, the scene before him forced him to believe it. Before he could even look at Lane's body, he saw Rogers holding Varian's hand, standing to the side. Although Varian was trying his best to hold his head high, Lothar could still see the fear in his eyes. He quickly walked over and took Varian's hand from Rogers. Sorry, I'm late. Uncle Lothar. Varian's tears instinctively wanted to fall. But he suddenly remembered what Rogers had said and quickly held them back. But the tears were beyond his control and continued to fall. Lothar was surprised by Varian's appearance. He comforted Varian until his emotions stabilized, then he looked at Rogers. Rogers, what's the situation? Rogers said softly, when I arrived at the palace, His Majesty had already been assassinated. So I could only scare these guards into notifying you first. I was afraid that other nobles would do something detrimental to the prince after learning about the king's assassination. Lothar was silent. Rogers's concerns were not without merit. The Stormwind nobles were no longer the pioneering nobles from the kingdom's early days. The current nobles only wanted to gain benefits and didn't want to contribute. Since the war with the orcs began, apart from the nobles in the army, the other nobles' contributions to the war were negligible, and some even had a negative impact. Some nobles used their connections to sell inferior products to the army, making huge profits. Now that Lane had been assassinated and Varian was young, if those greedy nobles were to seize control of Stormwind, who knew what insane things they would do? As for the great enemy at their doorstep, what did that have to do with them? Anyway, it was the commoners who would die. If the situation looked bad, these nobles would definitely run away at the first opportunity. Having prepared himself mentally, Lothar said, summon the nobles now. We need to stabilize the panic within the city. I'm afraid it won't be easy. Rogers warned, the last time the orcs attacked Stormwind, there was still a king in charge, and there was still considerable panic. This time, relying solely on a knight, I'm afraid his prestige won't be enough. Lothar's face was a little awkward. Being told directly that his prestige wasn't enough was indeed embarrassing. But he also knew that Rogers was right. Then what should we do? Send those restless people away. Rogers said, the knight should know what each noble is like. As long as we send these people who are holding us back away before the orcs attack Stormwind, I think they will be very willing to leave. But if we let the nobles leave first, it will be unfair to the commoners. It might even demoralize the army, and the soldiers will lose the will to resist, Lothar said worriedly. That's true. Rogers said, but until the ships return, everyone in the city has no way out. If they don't want to die, they can only defend Stormwind. Lothar was stunned. Putting the entire city in a life or death situation to strengthen their determination to defend the city was a very feasible plan, but it was too vicious. Rogers said in a low voice, extraordinary measures must be taken in extraordinary times. If we don't do this, Stormwind simply cannot be defended. When the time comes, the nobles may be able to leave by ship, but the vast majority of the commoners will die under the orcs' blades. Rather than let them die in vain, it's better to do this. Once Stormwind can't be defended, most of the commoners can still leave by ship. Lothar weighed the pros and cons and nodded slightly. Rogers continued, moreover, we are not letting the nobles leave without paying a price. If they want to leave early, they have to pay a price. They can take gold and silver treasures, but they must leave behind food, armor, weapons, and even private soldiers to help us defend Stormwind. Lothar nodded slightly. He was unwilling to let those nobles leave without paying a price. Now, Rogers's plan could not only eliminate internal threats but also strengthen the army's strength. He agreed with it very much. Do it. Rogers, immediately notify Todman and have him take over all the ships at the docks. Yes. Rogers took the order and quickly ran out of the palace. After finding Todman, he issued Lothar's order. Then the 11th Legion went straight to Stormwind Harbor, took over the defenses there, and took over the Navy's military power. The Stormwind Navy didn't have many people. It would be more accurate to call them sailors. Because they were more responsible for sailing ships to transport goods and soldiers. During battles, the transported soldiers would take action. This was caused by Stormwind Kingdom's unique geographical location. Although Stormwind City was backed by the ocean, Stormwind Kingdom was actually a continental country. Territorial disputes were basically conducted on land. The only maritime opponent on the southern half of the continent was the goblins of Stranglethorn Vale. But now Booty Bay had not yet grown strong, and the goblins were focusing more on dealing with their former masters, the trolls. Without a threat from the sea, a strong navy could not be developed. If it weren't for the fact that Stormwind Kingdom was too far away from other human kingdoms and had many merchant ships, it would not have been possible to take away the Stormwind nobles and their property in one go. Rogers didn't know how Lothar negotiated with the nobles, but it was clear that it had failed. A group of angry nobles stormed into the harbor with their private soldiers, wanting to seize the ships. Get out of my way! The nobles shouted arrogantly. Rogers smiled contemptuously, raised his hand, and the cannons on the warship turned around, aiming their muzzles at the nobles. These clumsy cannons cast by the dwarves didn't have very high technological content, but they had a large caliber and powerful power. One shot could definitely kill a large area. The nobles were in an uproar. Those who knew magic immediately put up shields, looking at the warship in fear, afraid that Rogers would really order the cannons to fire. Damn commoners! Many nobles cursed in a low voice. They had already recognized Rogers, the Nightborn from a commoner. Todman didn't expect Rogers to be so bold. He quickly said, "Everyone, withdraw from the harbor. Without Sir Lothar's order, no one can leave by ship." The nobles hesitated. If they really negotiated with Lothar, they would suffer great losses. But if they didn't negotiate with Lothar, none of them could leave. If they forced their way into the docks, Rogers might really open fire, and many people would definitely die. So, should he offer more conditions? Chapter 25. That night, Rogers stood on the pier, watching the fleet depart. The nobles had compromised, but they lost a lot as the price for leaving first. Every noble who passed by Roger glared at him with hatred, clearly knowing that Roger was advising Lothar. Roger didn't care. If hatred could kill, the orcs would have been extinct long ago. In this world, strength is what matters most. With the nobles who were holding them back gone, there were indeed some riots among the commoners in Stormwind City. But following Roger's advice, Lothar told them that they only needed to hold out until the fleet returned, which temporarily calmed the people down. The next day, everyone in Stormwind City was mobilized, and the city began to operate like a massive war machine, preparing for the upcoming siege. At this time, the orcs had already reached Redridge Mountains. Mayor Solomon of Lakeshire, having received Lothar's scorched earth order, once again led the people into the mountains, leaving the orcs an empty town without any resources. Failing to obtain the required supplies in Lakeshire made the orcs very angry. The new Warchief, Orgrim Doomhammer, made good use of this, marching non-stop towards Stormwind City. Just as they crossed the mountain pass, they saw a raging fire to the north. It was the East Vale logging camp. Orgrim's expression changed slightly, and he immediately ordered, "Full speed ahead. Go to the logging camp immediately and seize the lumber there." Although the orcs didn't understand, they still rushed towards the East Vale logging camp, doing their best to salvage the lumber there. However, they were still too late. Most of the lumber had already been burned, and only a small portion was salvaged. This made Orgrim very annoyed. Without lumber, they couldn't build siege weapons. Without siege weapons, the orcs couldn't climb the tall walls of Stormwind City. Fortunately, he had brought all the orcs with him this time, including not only elite warriors but also tens of thousands of weak peons. Orc peons were composed of underage orcs, weak adult orcs, and female orcs. Their combat power was lacking, but they were good at doing dirty and tiring work. Because orcs were physically strong, the strength of orc peons was no weaker than that of normal adult humans. Coupled with the racial talent of using axes, their logging speed was not slower than that of human lumberjacks. Racial talent was a joke, but the orcs' cruel system was real. Orcs revered the strong and discarded the weak like worn-out shoes, so when Hellscream drank the demon blood, others were willing to follow. As for the weak, they would unceremoniously enslave them, forcing them to dedicate all their strength to the great cause of the Horde. Now was the time for these peons to dedicate themselves to the Horde. The foreman drove these peons even more fiercely than usual, and even if these peons couldn't hold on and were worked to death, the foreman still didn't show any mercy. At this time, a group of orc warlocks entered the Eastvale logging camp and humbly paid their respects to Orgrim Doomhammer. Orgrim glanced at the warlocks. Gul'dan, you have caused too much damage to the Horde. It was my mercy that spared you. Now, it is time for you to repay the Horde. Yanziu. No, it was Gul'dan who lowered his head, the hood on his head obscuring his expression. He said in a humble tone, "Respected Warkif, I am here to repay your kindness." "Is that so?" Orgrim stood up with interest, walked to Gul'dan, and looked down at him. "Let me see how you plan to repay me." Gul'dan lowered his head even further. "The Shadow Council has been researching necromantic magic and discovered a way to place the souls of warlocks into the bodies of others. Then, through specific runes, these warlocks can use the power of death and control corpses. In this way, they will not need to eat or drink and can continue fighting." Orgrim raised an eyebrow slightly. "Oh? Is this the cavalry you promised me?" "That's right." Gul'dan's voice carried a hint of pride. "Warkif, no one can remain calm in the face of death, and neither can human cavalry." "Neither can you, Gul'dan," Orgrim said with a sneer. But he quickly hid that smugness and hurried to catch up. Outside the Eastvale logging camp, a nightly force exuding an aura of death stood on the avenue. These human bodies had already decayed, and the war horses they rode were also full of rotten flesh. If it weren't for the black gas lingering on the bodies of the people and horses, they would probably fall apart. In the eyes of these people and horses, there was a flickering ghostly blue light, and just one glance seemed to be able to absorb people's souls. They were the cavalry that Gul'dan had promised Orgrim Death Knights. The leading Death Knight saw Orgrim approaching, immediately jumped off the undead warhorse, knelt down on one knee to Orgrim. "Warkif, Terran Gorfiend is willing to serve you." Orgrim was very satisfied with Terran Gorfiend's attitude. This despicable warlock had killed all the prisoners in Caerdaro and even tried to stop him when he attacked the Shadow Council. He remembered it very clearly. At that time, he had smashed this despicable warlock to death with one hammer. Sure enough, only dying once could make these warlocks know who was the master of the Horde. Thinking of this, he glanced at Gul'dan and the other Shadow Council warlocks. If it weren't for the fact that he still needed them to maintain the Dark Portal, and that Terran Gorfiend hadn't yet proven his strength, he would have killed all these people. Feeling Orgrim's killing intent, the warlocks of the Shadow Council trembled. Orgrim smiled disdainfully. These cowards could only manipulate their evil spells. Turning his head, he looked at Terran Gorfiend. "Go to Stormwind City and let me see what you are good for." "Yes, Warkif." Terran Gorfiend remounted the undead warhorse, raised the runic staff in his hand, and led the Death Knights to Stormwind City. Soon, the Death Knights killed countless people around Stormwind City. Facing these ghost-like knights, the humans were half dead with fright before they even fought. How could they be their opponents? Chapter 26. "Sir, this is completely a rumor. How can the dead possibly come back to life?" One of the generals said. "It must be a trick of the orcs. They want to cause panic in the city. General Crispine has been dead for more than 10 years. How could the orcs possibly know what he looks like? Even if the orcs dug up General Crispine's body, I'm afraid only bones would be left." Another general raised his doubts. Parzonia said softly, "I know that too, but I still saw General Crispine. He wielded a staff flashing with runes, constantly reaping lives and extracting blood from the corpses, like a blood-sucking demon." Everyone couldn't help but shudder, obviously shocked by Parsonia's description. They looked at Parzonia, trying to find some trace of a prank on her face, but all they saw was blankness. Roger was stunned for a moment. Is Gul'dan already creating Death Knights now? Rogers, what's your opinion? Lothar suddenly asked. He now had a certain dependence on Roger. Everyone looked at Roger. This lucky low-ranking officer had gained Lothar's appreciation and could be said to have risen rapidly. He had not only become a lieutenant, but now also served as Lothar's military advisor, having already left the front lines of combat. Roger stood up and looked at the court mages of Stormwind City. Instead of guessing whether General Crispine has really come back to life, we need the mages to give their opinions. Everyone suddenly realized that such a strange thing should of course be asked of the mysterious mages. The court mages were a little caught off guard, they didn't expect to be involved in this. Respected mages, is there any magic that can bring the dead back to life? The mages shook their heads one after another. As far as we know, there is not. Everyone was a little disappointed, but Roger continued to ask, then, is there any spell that can control corpses to move on their own? This, I haven't heard of it either. The mages hesitated a little when answering. Roger continued to ask, then, according to magical theory, is it possible for such a spell to exist? So, you think the resurrection of the dead is real? Lothar asked. Whether it's real or not doesn't really matter. Roger's answer surprised everyone. Roger explained, if it's real, we have to prepare to deal with these blood-sucking demons. If it's fake, we still have to prepare to deal with them, so whether it's real or fake, the result is the same for us. Sir, I suggest summoning all the priests in the city and letting them come up with all possible ways to deal with evil magic, and then go find those corpses to experiment as soon as possible. If possible, the corpses must be completely eliminated, otherwise, it will be too late for us to deal with them when they reach Stormwind City. Lothar nodded and looked at the knight beside him. Bolvar, go summon the priests. Yes, sir. Bolvar did not run away with his family. Most of the members of the knights remained. Obviously, these knights still adhered to their creed and did not degenerate like the others in their families. Sir. Roger continued, since the orcs can move General Crispine's body, then they will also move the bodies of others. I think, if the people know that the bodies of their relatives have been desecrated by the orcs, they should be very angry, right? Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. But soon, they thought it was a very good idea. If the people in the city were stirred up, then Stormwind City would be easier to defend. The priests couldn't think of many ideas. They only thought of infusing holy light into weapons. But this was enough. Carrying the weapons infused by the priests, Roger led B Company out of Stormwind City. Although he could withdraw from the front lines of combat, Roger still took the initiative to lead B Company to attack. Ordinary troops were no match for Death Knights at all. Although the knights were powerful, they were still ordinary troops, and sending them against Death Knights was like delivering food. Only the 11th Legion with mages was the best choice. And as the strongest B Company, it was natural for Lothar to think of them first. How could Roger be at ease letting John lead B Company to deal with the unknown Death Knights? Although he only had a vague understanding of the Death Knight's abilities, he still had no problem escaping with Windwalk. In the forest, Talon was leading the Death Knights in pursuit of human refugees. Occasionally, lagging refugees were killed by the Death Knights, but these scattered killings could not satisfy the desires of the Death Knights. They wanted to kill all the humans they saw. The refugees were desperate. If they had known they would face such demons, they should have listened to Lothar's orders and retreated to Stormwind City. Stormwind City had huge walls and should be able to withstand these demons, right? Run! Why don't you run anymore? The Death Knights slowly approached the refugees, like cats playing with mice, neither hurrying to kill the refugees nor letting them escape. Feeling the refugees' despair, the Death Knights seemed to gain unparalleled satisfaction. Suddenly, with a crisp sound, an arrow with golden light shot out, piercing into the neck of a Death Knight. Ah! The holy light on the arrow burned the Death Knight's soul, causing him to let out a soul-wrenching roar. The Death Knights turned their heads one after another, wanting to find the enemy who attacked them. But what they saw were arrows and spells. The arrows all had holy light, and the spells were powerful fireballs. The Death Knights quickly waved their staffs, and powerful shields enveloped them one by one. The arrows and spells hit them, only shaking the shields. Heh. Talon sneered. He thought they were facing a powerful enemy, but it turned out to be nothing more than this. He raised his staff, and a barrage of shadow bolts shot into the forest. The other Death Knights immediately drove their undead war horses over. The nature of the orcs made them very enthusiastic about close combat. Moreover, as the distance decreased, the hit rate of the spells would also increase, a win-win situation. However, the Death Knights did not find any enemies. It was as if the person who had just shot the arrows and cast the spells did not exist. They immediately used soul perception and found that the enemy was riding away on a horse. Interesting. The Death Knights immediately chased after them. The undead war horses did not feel fatigue, and they would soon catch up with the enemy. Talon was a little regretful. He had never seen an enemy with such a lack of integrity, launching an attack and running away. Just as he was about to chase after them, he suddenly sensed someone approaching. He turned around abruptly and saw a long sword appearing out of thin air, flashing with a disgusting light, directly inserted into the neck of the Death Knight who had just been shot. The holy light purified the soul within the corpse, and the corpse and warhorse, no longer controlled, scattered on the ground. Roger reached out and shook off the evil aura clinging to his clothes before looking up at Talon. Blood-sucking demon? Doesn't seem very powerful. Chapter 27. A blood demon? Talon paused for a moment, finding the title quite fitting for his current identity. But in the next second, he looked at Roger and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't waste your little tricks, you can't save them." The slowly moving refugees were immediately shocked and turned to run. However, Talon had already raised his staff, unleashing a barrage of violent shadow projectiles at Roger and the fleeing refugees. Countless shadow arrows engulfed Roger, and their force did not diminish as they slammed into the refugees. Ah! Numerous screams rang out as the refugees were eroded by shadow and fell energy, instantly falling to the ground, dead. Talon stopped casting, very satisfied with his masterpiece. Before being killed by Orgrim, he was just a warlock with mediocre strength, not even ranking in the Shadow Council. If he hadn't brown-nosed Gul'dan, he would have only suffered the bullying of the warlocks. Even so, after Gul'dan fell into a coma, he was ostracized by jealous warlocks, which led to him being pushed out to resist Orgrim when Orgrim attacked the Shadow Council. After becoming a Death Knight, although his soul was imprisoned in a human body, his strength greatly increased. Gul'dan, out of consideration for the past, gave him a powerful body, runes, and magical weapons. With these, he became the leader of the Death Knights. Looking at the corpses all over the ground, Talon felt very comfortable. Although it was a little flawed that Roger wasn't dead, it didn't affect his good mood. He sneered at Roger, who was kneeling on the ground. "Heh now, you should understand the gap between us, right?" Roger felt a little frustrated. He felt useless. Although he used a shield infused with holy light to save his life, he failed to save the refugees behind him. Of course, more than that, it was hatred. The orcs killed his parents just like this Death Knight slaughtered refugees, and the fire of hatred seemed to burn him to ashes. He looked up at the Death Knight. "Tell me your name, I will definitely kill you." Talon didn't care about Roger's threat at all. He raised his staff and aimed it at Roger. "My name is Talon Bloodfiend, that's right, it's Talon Bloodfiend. When you go to see the God of Death, remember to tell him this name." With that, Talon Bloodfiend cast magic again, engulfing Roger. When the magical light dissipated, Talon Bloodfiend was stunned. He didn't see Roger's body. Roger appeared next to a distant tree, holding onto the tree trunk and looking at him with hatred. "Talon Bloodfiend, I will avenge you." Talon Bloodfiend watched Roger disappear again, thoughtfully. "Is that Windwalk?" After escaping, Roger found a safe place and used the holy water he brought to clean the corroded wounds on his body. The erosion of shadow and fell energy made him feel weak all over. But he still braced himself to find his comrades. Finally, after rushing to the scheduled meeting place, Roger couldn't hold on and fainted. In the moment of fainting, he seemed to hear John's call. When Roger woke up again, he found himself in a dark cave. He suddenly got up, but before he could get up, he fell down again in pain. "Roger! You're awake!" John walked over in surprise. He felt a little weak, but his condition was okay. The erosion of fell energy had disappeared, and John should have used holy water to clean his wounds. However, the sequelae of the fell energy erosion were still there, and he needed some time to recover his strength. Almost 10 days. John told him bad news. Yesterday afternoon, the orcs broke through Stormwind City. What? Roger was stunned. Stormwind City didn't even hold out for 10 days. The orcs felled a large number of trees in a few days and built many catapults. Under the cover of the catapults, the orc spellcasters suddenly released evil magic on the gate of Stormwind City, corroding the gate of Stormwind City. Fortunately, the fleet heading north returned, and Sir Lothar was able to lead everyone in the city to escape Stormwind City. But, even if the orcs broke through the gate, Stormwind City could still be defended. Roger asked in confusion. When he designed the defense system, he had already considered the warlock's spells. Even if the orcs broke through the gate, the defenders could completely trigger the mechanism and block the passage into the city with boulders. John's eyes were a little evasive. What are you hiding? John was silent for a moment. When the orcs attacked the city, we were observing on the top of the mountain. When the orcs broke through the gate, the soldiers guarding the front line collapsed and did not trigger the boulder mechanism. John looked into Roger's eyes and said, "Those deserters were all private soldiers of the nobles." "Damn it!" Roger punched the stone wall, and the edges of the stone wall cut his hand, and blood kept dripping on the stone, dyeing the stone red. John quickly took out the healing potion and applied it to his hand. "Roger, I know you feel bad. But you need to know that the nobles are not reliable. It's my fault." Roger really regretted it. He shouldn't have forced those nobles' private soldiers to stay in order to have more troops. If there were no such bad apples, Stormwind City still had a chance to hold on. Soon, he adjusted his mentality. Now that Stormwind City had been breached, there was no point in thinking about these things anymore. What about the orc casualties? The casualties are not very big. John shook his head a little. Roger gritted his teeth. "It seems we have to kill more." John understood what Roger meant. "That's right, but before that, you have to heal your injuries first. These days I will take everyone to scout the situation of the orcs first. After you get better, we will hunt the orcs." Roger nodded and obediently lay down. He opened the system to see what he had gained from killing the Death Knight before. The Grandmaster Swordsman leveled up and added a skill point to Guillotine, upgrading it to the skilled level. The Hunter also leveled up and added a skill point to Camouflage, also upgrading it to the skilled level. Achievement unlocked, Face Death Directly, gain 3 achievement points. All used to strengthen Camouflage. Concealment, Visual Deception increased by 10%, Perceptual Deception increased by 10%, True Sight Deception increased by 10%. Visual, Perceptual, and True Sight Deception all increased, so after he disguised himself, wouldn't he be even more powerful than invisibility? While thinking, he used the skill. John put away the bottle of healing potion and turned to leave. "Roger, I'll go first, Roger." The place where Roger was lying was empty. If the blood stains on the wall weren't still there, he would have suspected that Roger wasn't lying there just now. Chapter 28. Roger recovered quickly. Although the priest couldn't do anything about the residual fell energy corroding his body, he healed his injuries. The priest came from Northshire, which had already been captured by the orcs. B Company had preemptively covered the evacuation of non-combat personnel to the Echo Ridge mine where Roger was recovering. Some priests from Northshire Abbey were also arranged to come, to take care of the people of Northshire and to soothe their hearts. Fortunately, the orcs withdrew after looting all the supplies from Northshire. People left the Echo Ridge mine and returned to their land to plant crops again. It would take a long time for Lothar to lead the Alliance army back, and before that, the people of Northshire had to ensure they didn't starve to death. The task of restoring production was left to the priests of the abbey. Roger led B Company in manufacturing enough arrows, maintaining their weapons and armor, and then set off on the road to Goldshire. After the orcs broke through Stormwind City, they did not occupy it for long. Instead, they looted all the supplies in the city and then burned it to the ground. Then they returned to Redridge Mountains, seemingly advancing north. Roger knew that the warmongering orcs were not satisfied with this victory. Orgrim was not satisfied with the land of the Kingdom of Stormwind either. He wanted to conquer the entire continent and seize living space for the orcs. Therefore, he followed the trend and chose to continue attacking north, killing all humanoid creatures they encountered. Elwyn Forest could provide the most supplies in the form of timber, but Redridge Mountains also had forests, and what Elwyn Forest could provide, Redridge Mountains could also provide. What Redridge Mountains could not provide was only Goldshire's specialties. The Jade Quarry and the Fargo Deep Mine were the top gold mines in the Kingdom of Stormwind. The gold produced here supported the development of the Kingdom of Stormwind for hundreds of years. It could be said that these two mines supported the Kingdom of Stormwind's centuries of territorial expansion, providing military expenses for tens of thousands of troops. Especially after the gold mines in Moonbrook were exhausted, these two mines became especially important to the Kingdom of Stormwind. Now, the orcs had obtained these two mines, giving them the capital to continue their northward offensive. They used the gold to purchase a large amount of supplies from the goblins in Stranglethorn Vale, including important military supplies such as weapons, armor, food, and magical items. In order to avoid exposing the human survivors in Northshire, Roger did not attack the Jade Quarry, but bypassed Goldshire and launched a surprise attack on the Fargo Deep Mine. Faced with the powerful Death Knight, B Company had merely been led by the nose through the forest for several laps, with only a few casualties. Now, facing only the Orc peons and foremen, it was simply no difficulty for the soldiers of B Company. In less than half an hour, B Company killed all the orcs in the Fargo Deep Mine, and then used the orcs' carriages to transport the refined gold to the docks in the south. This dock was east of the McClure Vineyards. There were several small boats there, which transported the carriages and gold eastward. Roger really wanted to transport this gold to Redridge Mountains, but there were too many orcs there. Helplessly, Roger could only head south, towards Darkshire. After the explosion of Karazhan, the entire southern Elwyn forest was shrouded in gloom. The once sunny Darkshire was now perpetually without sunlight, having become Duskwood. The orcs left hundreds of orcs stationed in Duskwood, their mission being to prevent human survivors from crossing the Deadwind Pass and attacking the Dark Portal. They established defences in Duskwood and the mountain pass of Deadwind Pass, but this also gave Roger an opportunity. After setting up traps in the forest, Roger led the hunters closer to Duskwood. A wolf rider squad was stationed in Duskwood. Although there were only 50 of them, the orcs believed that the wolf riders could defeat any invading human survivors, thanks to Duskwood's commanding terrain. Roger forcefully drew back his elven hunter's bow and shot a magical arrow. The arrow drew a perfect arc in the sky and fell into the Wurg Kennel. Whoosh! The flames spread rapidly, igniting the Wurg Kennel and the nearby Wurgs. The Wurgs that were burned howled and fled, while the Wurgs that weren't burned ran even faster, afraid that the flames would spread to them too. But the kennel was so small, where could they hide? Soon the entire kennel was engulfed in flames, and the Wurgs howled as they tried to escape. They frantically slammed into the kennel, but the steel-made kennel remained motionless. The orcs guarding the kennel were stunned and quickly rushed towards the kennel, wanting to open the kennel door and release the Wurgs. Swish! A sharp arrow pierced his neck, reaping his life. The orcs not far away also noticed the firelight from the kennel and rushed over. But a rain of arrows came, felling more than half of them. Those lucky orcs shouted while dodging the arrows, "Enemies!" The entire Duskwood orc garrison was alarmed. A strong orc was unusually conspicuous in the crowd. He was an orc warrior, the highest commander of Duskwood. The orc warrior looked in the direction of the arrows and roared, "Despicable humans, I will kill you all!" Wielding a battle axe, he led a squad of orc warriors towards Roger's direction. Roger curled his lips in disdain. "Brothers, let the hunt begin." The hunters of B Company nodded one after another, dispersing and retreating into the forest before the orcs arrived. Roger shot down several orcs in succession, and finally retreated into the forest. Seeing that he had become a lone wolf, he roared at the forest, "Damn humans, do you dare to have a decisive battle with me?" Pfft! A blade pierced out from his chest. With his last strength, the orc warrior turned his head and said his last words to Roger with hatred, "You have defiled Magara." Roger kicked the orc warrior's corpse away, pulled out the flame blade, and said disdainfully, "Based on the virtues of you orcs, your Magara is not a good thing either. To hate the orcs is to hate everything about them." "Lieutenant Kaishan, the orc wolf riders are rushing over," a hunter reminded. "Let's go." Roger led his men and quickly fled into the forest. After seeing the corpse of the orc warrior, the wolf riders angrily chased after them. They had no way to explain to the chieftain unless they killed Roger and the others. And so, they entered the trap zone. When a Wurg stepped on a trap, the fate of these wolf riders was already sealed. Chain traps were constantly triggered, and the ejected arrows and blades cut the Wurg's thighs, causing them to lose their ability to move. Then countless arrows and magic shot out from the forest, engulfing the wolf riders. Chapter 29. After dealing with the wolf riders, the orcs in Duskwood were no longer a threat. B Company spent an hour clearing out the orcs in Duskwood. After the battle, Roger allowed the soldiers to rest. In this battle, Roger's hunter class leveled up twice, and he used the 2 skill points to upgrade Marksman. Marksman, mastery range increased by 40%, accuracy increased by 40%, attack power increased by 40%. After eating something, drinking some water, and digesting a bit, Roger made a tactical deployment. John, I need you to stay in Duskwood. This gold is very important to us. With it, we can fight for a longer time. John was a little reluctant. What about you? Roger. I'm going to Karazhan. Roger said, Lady Egwene has regained control of Karazhan. Now it is the only safe place in the Stormwind Kingdom. Likewise, it is also the place where you can get the most magical items. Our current equipment is not strong enough. Dealing with ordinary orcs is okay, but against those powerful orcs, especially orc spellcasters, we can only run away. Last time I was lucky enough to escape from Talon Bloodweaver's hands, but that doesn't mean I can escape next time. John was silent. He knew that Roger's concerns were very reasonable. B Company's combat strength was strong, but that was against ordinary orcs. If there were orc powerhouses, not to mention orc spellcasters, even a blademaster would be too much for them. So, the two split up. Madam, what's wrong with you? Egwene shook her head gently. You wouldn't understand magical things. Tell me your purpose. What did Lothar send you to Karazhan for? Sir Lothar didn't send me. Amid Egwene's surprise, Roger told her the news of Stormwind's fall and Lothar's northward march. Are the orcs so powerful? Roger shook his head. It's not that the orcs are powerful, but our own human problems. Roger briefly told Egwene about the nobles and their private soldiers holding back, and then said, Madam, I have come to Karazhan for reinforcements. We are in dire need of magical items now, otherwise we can only deal with ordinary orcs. I understand. Egwene said, but I am powerless now. What do you mean? Egwene said, when I arrived at Karazhan, I discovered that there were serious problems here. In the underground of Karazhan, there is actually a mirror space exactly the same as Karazhan. That is where Medivh studied dark magic. The distorted energy seriously affected Karazhan. When Medivh died, a big explosion occurred in Karazhan. In the big explosion, the distorted energy was released into the sky outside Karazhan, forming a distorted space above. The distorted space has infiltrated some strange energy, which has affected the creatures inside Karazhan. Medivh's experimental products, even Moros, have changed. So, I can't help you much. Roger opened his mouth. This was too coincidental. However, he quickly thought that in the game, Karazhan eventually became a dungeon. Kadger even opened Dalaran to the sky above Karazhan, wanting to seal the distorted space above Karazhan. As a result, the Burning Legion teleported in several fell battleships through the distorted space, almost blowing up Dalaran. Then, what can you help us with? Madam. Come with me. Egwene led Roger and others to a room. Here are some of Medivh's collections. You can take everything here. Besides that, all I can help you with is knowledge. With that, she took out a magic package. Inside are some of my notes and some of Medivh's collection of books. I hope they will be useful to you. Roger took the magic package. Compared to the collectibles in this room, the books were what he valued. However, he would not give up choosing collectibles either. He wanted both the fish and the bear's paw. He took a fancy to a bow with an extremely cool shape, a fiery red bird-shaped bow. This was the famous Phoenix bow. Phoenix Sun's Strider, epic, shooting can enchant arrows with fire damage. It looked like a weapon made by high elves, gorgeous in shape and powerful. Roger reached out and picked up the bow, and immediately felt a burning sensation. Roger was very surprised. He felt that the bow in his hand seemed to have too much active energy. Swish! A large amount of red light emerged from the bow and flew towards Roger's pocket, which contained the arcane essence of the blue dragon. Ah! Arcanus appeared comfortably from the arcane essence. Human, you finally found something to absorb, damn it, why are you still in Karazhan? The soldiers of B Company looked at the roaring blue dragon soul in astonishment. It was the first time they had seen a dragon. Egwene was also very surprised, but she quickly reacted, Arcanus? The blue dragon killed by Medivh. Don't mention that bastard to me, you mortal, Arcanus roared at Egwene, but when it saw Egwene clearly, it immediately swallowed the words that followed. Aye! Lady Egwene. Egwene looked at it with a half-smile, long time no see. Arcanus immediately retreated to Roger's side. If hiding behind Roger didn't make it look too cowardly, it would definitely do so. Madam, do you know it? Of course. Egwene smiled, I once saved its life. If it weren't for me, it would have died in the hands of demons long ago. Roger knew that Egwin was talking about the blue dragons being slaughtered by demons and using their energy to summon Sargeras. Egwin killed all the demons, including Sargeras. Egwin saved many blue dragons in that battle, and Arcanus was very likely one of them. However, judging from the blue dragon's expression, Egwin didn't seem to be its life-saving benefactor, but rather a demon who harmed its life. This is interesting. But before satisfying his gossip, he decided to fulfill his promise first. Madam, do you know how to redeem its soul? Chapter 30. Egwin shook her head. Perhaps you could ask a dragon. Roger shrugged. If he could encounter a dragon, he wouldn't be asking Egwin. Egwin said, the arcane essence of a blue dragon is a rare treasure. It can absorb a large amount of magical energy. If you can learn to use it, you might become a pretty good mage. Roger was tempted. To be considered pretty good by Egwin meant being quite powerful. However, you'd better use it after releasing the blue dragon's soul, otherwise you might incur the dragon's hostility. Before your power grows to a certain level, it's best not to provoke them, Egwin warned. Roger nodded to show he understood, then searched through the collection for a set of armor. This armor was very light, but since Medivh had collected it, it should be a good item. Urian Dynasty Armor, Epic. Under the protection of the late king, this armor possesses stronger defensive capabilities and is more lightweight when used. The 10-man squad also finished searching for the weapons they needed. The remaining collectibles were placed into the magic pouch by Roger, ready to take back for others to use. The magic pouch Egwin gave was large enough to fit all the collectibles in this room without filling it completely. Madam, goodbye for now. Egwin nodded. I'm sorry, I have other things to do and can't fight alongside you. Roger expressed his understanding. Although he knew that with Egwin, they would be much safer, Roger believed that Karazhan was more important than the orcs. If the distorted space above Karazhan were to expand, the Burning Legion might arrive ahead of schedule. After leaving Karazhan, Arcanegos immediately became active. Mortal, don't come to Karazhan again, and especially don't go to see Egwin. Why not? Arcanegos's eyes flickered, obviously recalling some bad memories. He glared at Roger angrily. Why do you ask so many questions? Just don't do it, okay? Roger's gossipy heart was ignited. Hey, why are you afraid of Madame Egwin? Who said I'm afraid of her? You're not afraid of her. Roger said with a smile. Oh dear, I remembered something I forgot to tell Madame Egwin. While we haven't gone too far, let's go back first. Stop, mortal! The blue dragon roared. Roger raised an eyebrow and asked, come on, tell me, why are you afraid of Madame Egwin? The blue dragon immediately shut his mouth. Then I'm going back. Stop! The blue dragon looked at Roger menacingly. Mortal, don't test my bottom line. Roger found it amusing. Actions speak louder than words. Stop, stop. The blue dragon yielded. Mortal, let's make a deal. As long as you don't mention this matter, I'll teach you how to use magic. Roger was very surprised. One must know that blue dragons value magic more than their lives. As a result, Arcanegos was willing to teach him magic in order to conceal his affair with Egwin. Tisk tisk. Roger became even more curious. But after thinking about it, he chose to learn magic. All right. Roger said, I won't mention this matter, but if you don't wholeheartedly teach me, don't blame me for being impolite. The blue dragon gritted his teeth and said, don't worry, now that I've promised you, I will naturally teach you well. There was no choice, who told him his weakness was in Roger's hands. While on the road, the blue dragon explained to Roger how to use arcane magic. Not only did Roger listen with great interest, but even the other members of the team benefited greatly. Arcane magic is contained in the sky at all times. Although it cannot be seen or touched, once these arcane energies are gathered, they can be transformed into magic, causing damage to enemies or creating an item. Arcane magic is omnipotent, it is the origin of all matter. With the portable grandpa, Roger's theoretical knowledge was learned very quickly. But as he listened, Roger felt that arcane magic was a bit familiar, just like oxygen and nitrogen, filling the entire sky. It's not just that, arcane magic is also copper, iron, gold, and silver, including but not limited to the periodic table of elements. Otherwise, arcane magic couldn't create so many things, or rather, arcane magic can differentiate into various elements. Thinking like this, Roger felt that arcane magic became very easy to understand. Although his chemistry knowledge wasn't very good, casting spells wasn't about memorizing formulas, just a thought would do. When camping at night, the blue dragon said, "I've already told you the theory on the road, now you can try to manipulate my arcane essence to cast spells, starting with the simplest create water spell." Roger nodded and tried according to the method taught by the blue dragon. After experimenting a few times, he finally triggered a trace of arcane energy. Arcane energy surged between his hands, gradually turning into a small water ball. Success! Roger was overjoyed, but the water ball immediately collapsed, turning back into arcane energy and dissipating. "You're so stupid." The blue dragon rolled his eyes. "When I cast my first spell, I directly released arcane missiles." Roger was speechless. "You are a blue dragon, born to use arcane magic, what are you comparing with me? Don't be complacent, you can't even be considered a mage apprentice yet." The blue dragon continued to strike Roger, then pointed out Roger's previous mistakes. "Create water is the simplest magic, and water is the most common liquid we see. Don't think about other useless things when you cast spells, just think about water." One more time. Roger cast the spell again, and according to the blue dragon's correction, the speed was indeed faster. The blue dragon helped him correct his spell casting errors while hitting Roger. Aside from being a bit poisonous, this portable grandpa was still very competent. By the time he went to bed, Roger could easily cast create water. After closing his eyes, Roger opened the system. After the guidance of the blue dragon Arcanagos, you have become a mage. Through continuous learning, your mage level has increased. You have learned create water. Roger was not surprised at all to become a mage. With a portable grandpa and portable magic energy, if he still couldn't become a mage, he might as well die. But what made him a little upset was that the system wasted one of his skill points on create water. Although create water is a skill in the game, you can learn it as long as you spend money in the game. But now, create water has no damage ability other than creating water, and it is not cost effective to spend skill points on it at all. With this skill point, he could completely learn a powerful magic that could kill more orcs. Depressed, Roger turned his attention to create water, but as he looked at it, a flash of inspiration struck him. What would happen if he strengthened create water with achievement points?